Good morning, everybody. Welcome to this hybrid workshop aimed at elaborating the Innovation Fund to mature research and innovation projects. So welcome to all of those who are here in the Albert Bochet building in Brussels, and welcome to all of you who are viewing remotely. In a moment, I will introduce the speakers who will give the welcome address and give some opening remarks. But I see that viewers are still joining, so just let me run through the agenda of what we're going to see today, because I have a pretty busy, busy session today. By the way, my name's Alan Haig. I'm Policy Advisor to Joanna Drake, who will speak in a few moments' time in DG Research and Innovation. But interestingly, I was part of the CINEA Executive Agency, and so I was involved in many of these Horizon 2020 projects being evaluated and funded some years ago, and may even have signed some of the grant agreements for those of you who are presenting at today's sessions or are viewing. So it's a personal pleasure for me to be involved in a workshop where we're trying to build synergies between research and innovation results and the Innovation Fund, which is a great program and will be elaborated later. So I'm delighted to moderate this session. To come back to the agenda, in a few moments I would introduce the Acting Director of the CINEA Executive Agency, that's Paloma Abagarota. And then we would move to some words from Clara de la Torre, who is the Deputy Director General of DG Climate Action, who I also had the pleasure to work with sometime in the past when you were Director of Transport Research in DG Research and Innovation, so we look forward to that. And then, of course, some words from Joanna Drake, who is Deputy Director General of DG Research and at DG Research and Innovation. Then we will have a short break, which should bring us to 9:55, so that we can start sharp on some of the content sessions. And myself and a colleague from DG Clima, José Jiménez Mingo, will present Synergies, the case for Synergies, and what's been going on recently to encourage synergies between programs, and specifically in José's case with the Innovation Fund and some recent actions. Then at 10:15, we have colleagues from DG Clima and the CINEA agency who will really be able to explain the Innovation Fund and how it operates. So Maria and Roman will speak at that moment. And then you get a real opportunity to hear from some projects themselves, some projects who have had first-hand experience of using or applying to the Innovation Fund. So that's ANRAV and CarbFix. So that should be a very interesting session. And then Philip Hawkins, again from DG Clima, will give some information about the session, who's at this session, and how the breakout rooms will work. And then we break out into the 3 sessions, and you should have your links to those sessions and know which session you're going to. So please look back in your emails, and at a certain moment we will show the QR codes where you can get to the various breakout groups. And after that, Alexandra Paco from DG Climate Action will say some final words about the day. Just one housekeeping point before we start the session, and that is that we're using Slido today. So Slido for the Q&A session. So I would say during the break, please have a look at the Slido link, or click on the QR code now and use the hashtag #H2020 IF Synergies, and you should find the room and you can pose your question and you can then vote for the question that you want. So after that rather long introduction, I hope that everybody is now connected, and I would like to hand the floor to our first speaker, and that is Paloma Abagarota, who is the Acting Director of the CINEA agency. And so, Paloma, if you're ready, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Alan. Ladies and gentlemen, dear colleagues, it is a great honor for me as Acting Director of the European Climate, Infrastructure and Environment Executive Agency to welcome you at this workshop dedicated to synergies between the European Framework Programme for Research and Innovation and the Innovation Fund. I am very happy to see again some of the projects of the Innovation Fund that I had the chance to meet during our recent Innovation Fund Clean Tech event in January. Today's workshop brings together participants from mature projects funded by the European Union Research and Innovation Programme to help them explore funding opportunities under the Innovation Fund for deployment of their clean tech solutions. We will hear today how the European Commission, together with CINEA, are promoting synergies between the various funding programs. We will also discuss about lessons learned from the past Innovation Fund calls. And finally, we will learn from beneficiaries who receive funding from Horizon program for the earlier stage of their projects, how they plan to deploy their innovative technologies on the market with funding from the Innovation Fund. The Innovation Fund presently supports 53 projects and 118 beneficiaries, aiming to reach the equivalent of about 246 million tons of CO2 avoided. These projects are being implemented across 16 countries, ranging from energy-intensive industries, carbon capture, use and storage, renewable energy to energy storage. Out of these 53 projects, 12 received previous funding from Horizon 2020. This clearly shows that the two programs complement each other and provide synergic financing from projects from the research and innovation stage towards market deployment. I find it encouraging to see how breakthrough ideas are developed, transformed from the lab to the pilot scale, and then subsequently deployed on an industrial scale under real market conditions. This shows that clean technologies are effectively becoming profitable and promising business opportunities. I am happy to see that CINEA accompanies the innovation and deployment journey of our projects with the support of various European Union funding programs. Through this support, we aim to establish strong partnerships, foster knowledge sharing, and create synergies between programs. This is why we are here today, to connect the links between the support you have received under Research and Innovation Programme and the Innovation Fund. In the past 2 years, we have launched 5 Innovation Fund calls, 2 for large-scale projects and 2 for small-scale projects, with a third call for large-scale projects currently open. Over 3 billion euros have already been granted to low-carbon innovative projects, and further 3 billion are currently available under the present call. But this is just the beginning. Next few calls will come in the coming years. We want to see more innovators taking up the challenge to scale up their green technologies based on the excellent science coming from the Horizon projects. I hope that the event today will inspire you to bring your innovations to the market and, where appropriately, apply for the Innovation Fund if you need this support to build your business case. I am really looking forward to today's interesting discussions, and most of all, I hope we will see many good applications in the Innovation Fund. There is still time to apply because under the current call, the day of closure is the 16th of March. So thank you for all your attention. Thank you to all.
Thank you so much, Paloma. And I would like to thank you and all of the colleagues from the CINEA agency for the support you've given us today, because this is quite a complex session that you've set up here, on-site, off-site, 3 breakout rooms and all of the other things that go with it. So thank you so much for your support from the beginning. And that message that you send that some Horizon 2020 projects have already made it into the Innovation Fund is a very positive message. So thank you for that. And now it's my pleasure to introduce Clara de la Torre, who is Deputy Director General at DG Climate Action, And Clara, if you're ready, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Alan. Thank you, and I join in your thanks and gratitude to our colleagues of CINEA who have been organizing this workshop, what we see and what we don't see. So thank you so much. And I'm very happy to be here together with colleagues from CINEA and DG RTD, because this is a unique opportunity to join efforts in namely addressing the challenges of climate change. To do that, we can only do that together, united, and science and technology is very much part of the solution. So the workshop of today, with all of you over there working really on the solutions, is a good example of collaboration between the different actors. Only a few months ago, I'm sure Joanna and Alan remember that we were discussing how do we put in music these synergies between Horizon 2020 and Innovation Fund. And I'm really impressed of the progress we have made out of I wouldn't say simple conversation, but yet a conversation. So I've been working for many years in research and innovation, and I can only encourage you to continue participating in Horizon Europe, but I am here today in particular to encourage you to participate in the Innovation Fund. I'm joined also by my colleagues both in CINEA and Klima who are working on that. Why do we have Innovation Fund? It's there to facilitate precisely the deployment of a number of solutions, of a number of technologies that are coming out of our research and demonstration pipelines. Because we know the weakness, one weakness that we have in the European Union is precisely to make sure that the results of research and innovation are flowing into the economic tissue. So this is really an important step forward in having this innovation cycle somewhat completed. There are already a number of examples, Paloma has mentioned, and we will be seeing today, of combination of these different funding sources. I know it's not always easy, but I think it's very much part of what we have to continue doing in the future, if we want to reduce the emissions of greenhouse gas emissions. We need to deploy these technologies. My colleagues, Romana and Maria, will be giving you a detailed information about what the Innovation Fund is. But at this point, let me highlight a couple of features which are important in the Innovation Fund. It's there to deliver on the Paris Agreement. And the Paris Agreement and our commitment vis-à-vis the Paris Agreement is to stay below 1.5 degrees of increase in temperature and to be the first part of the world that becomes climate neutral by 2050. How is the Innovation Fund funded? Precisely via our pillar, I would say the main pillar of climate action, climate policy, which is the emissions trading system, the ETS. And the ETS fits into the Innovation Fund, fits into many other things, it fits in member states' budget, but fits into the Innovation Fund, and it makes it the world's largest fund to support the development of low-carbon technologies. So it's really a place to bring in innovative ideas, innovative technologies that are, from a technological point of view, relatively mature, but that need to be upscaled and deployed in the economy. The Innovation Fund total amount of endowment depends very much on the carbon price. But taking a carbon price of 75 euros ton of CO2, we could say that around 40 billion euros are available in the Innovation Fund from now until 2030. So really, really an important instrument to develop technologies. And the goals of the fund are very much aligned, and this is why we can combine with the objectives of Horizon Europe, which says many things, applies to many sectors, but in the one that occupies us today, it says that it's there to help businesses invest in clean energy and industry, to boost economic growth, create local future-proof jobs, and reinforce European technological leadership on a global scale. So it's really what we're doing here and what you are doing there on the ground. You know that following the unjustified invasion of Ukraine by Russia, we had, as the Union, to take a number of measures. We continue taking them, but one of them, let us talk about the positive one, which is the Repower EU plan. And then there we are very much promoting the development of decarbonization instruments. We are widening our supply of energy, and we are pushing for an accelerated transformation of our economy. Yet again, the Innovation Fund is being one of the big sources of funding of the Repower EU plan. It is not by chance that the breakout sessions that Alan has just mentioned are distributed in that manner, because precisely the technologies that the Innovation Fund supports are those addressing innovative low-carbon technologies for the decarbonization of energy-intensive industries. And since this is very much, these technologies are very much in sync or combined with CCUS, we have one session of decarbonizing of industrial technologies and CCUS. We have another session, because this is an important field for the Innovation Fund, about renewable energy generation. And last but not least, very important as well in the context of the Repower EU, we have a session dedicated to energy storage and hydrogen. So this workshop is just the beginning of what I hope will be a long and fruitful journey. We are starting these processes, these seminars with building synergies with mature projects for from Horizon 2020, and I hope to see these solutions deployed in the market very soon. This process of synergetic process is being helped by a number of actions supported by the framework program, which are helping you and any other that might be interested in building, in preparing sound proposals for the Innovation Fund, which will, as Horizon Europe, keep their own processes for evaluation. So, strong recognition for this idea, strong recognition for this happening, and thank you to colleagues in the GRTD, colleagues in CINEA, and my own colleagues in CLIMA for bringing us in this fascinating venture. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Clara, for that, for those opening remarks. And you really highlight the 40 billion euro in a programme is a huge amount of funding, and I think referred to a few moments ago, 3 billion in the current call. This is a tremendous opportunity for research to then make the next step to deployment. So thank you so much for your presentation, and also for the support you've given in setting up this because it wouldn't have happened without your support and that of the Innovation Fund. So thank you. So now it's my opportunity or my pleasure to introduce Joanna Drake, who is the Deputy Director General in DG Research and Innovation. So Joanna, if you're ready, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Thank you, Alan, and good morning to all. Making this presentation today alongside the colleagues from both CINEA Executive Agency and DG Klima is really a pleasure for me. As Clara acknowledged, it has not been that long that we've had that difficult conversation, but I am also quite impressed with what territory we have achieved, if you like, in the meantime. It has not been a tsunami, but it has been a steady flow, I would say, a steady tide, and I think it's clearly visible. There is a desire, in other words, and it is very detectable. It's much talked about, but maybe it's the action on the ground that we need to be seeing multiplications of. There's much talk about synergies, creating synergies. Everybody talks about it. But of course, within our area of operation, the different programs that we have, the different opportunities that there are there, it makes it nearly a sin not to have more bridges being built between the opportunity and also the challenges that we are facing. And also the very little time that we have really to prove the point that Clara has been saying, that it's the first ever continent that has made, and I think it's the only one so far that has made this pledge to the world that it will be carbon neutral. So it is an aspiration. We'll just have to make it much more of a reality. I have been lucky since I've joined RTD to have alongside me Alan Haig, who I think through him, he has made me understand how to be insistent on synergies between programs, how to be helpful also towards creating these bridges, these synergies, how to create this bridge between the beneficiaries and the applicants, and to create a path, a travel path, if you like, through research and innovation to deployment, which is what I think the world is waiting for more and more. So if we think of an audience out there, think of the Oscars and the Grammy Awards, I think we really want to go on stage and show off. And I think we've got so much to show off with. Now, if we want to go a bit technical, and again, thanks to Alan, I have been much more accustomed to these terms than I've ever been in my life, about technology readiness level, the TRLs. We're making the journey from low TRL to high TRL, and finally, deployment in the marketplace. Many good projects are financed and research programs all over Europe. We have no doubt of that. But not all lead to the results that are fully exploited. And I think this is also a known truth. Now, this lack of traction between good ideas and great research, not making it into a product of service, is sometimes referred to as the very gloomy term of valley of death. And you don't have to go to Game of Thrones for that. An imaginary or real blockage between research and deployment. Now, it is clear that Horizon 2020 program has many projects funded at the scale of pilot or so-called demonstration projects that are now mature projects with potentially usable results. And this is where the Innovation Fund comes in very handy, because as Clara explained, and Paloma as well, it offers real opportunities to make the mature Horizon 2020 project results and exploit them in the areas of its own priorities. And I think this is the key word here. Now, these priorities coincide with the declared goals of the Green Deal, which coincide in turn with many topic areas of Horizon Research and Innovation Programme. And therefore, it seemed an obvious task to establish a workshop in which projects that are mature and ready for scale-up or follow-on funding pass from Horizon to the Innovation Fund. We are sort of, preparing the package maybe a little bit half-baked, half-wrapped, but of course we want to make sure that it is well-baked and ready for eating and well-wrapped up. And this is why I was delighted when Clara de la Torre and Clima was receptive to the concept, first of all, and not only receptive, but she did something about it as well. And our services were immediately energized to put the wheels in motion. Not only that, but also CINEA Executive Agency was very willing, and I must say also very capable of organizing this workshop, and I thank the agency for their support. And I think this has been really an exemplary demonstration of, agencies, services, programs not working in silos. And I think this really needs to be replicated at all levels. And I know it already is in various parts of the Commission and various parts of the agencies, but I think we need to make it, the obvious head turner, I would say. This workshop, therefore, represents more than an opportunity to learn about the workings of the Innovation Fund and key lessons learned from the former applicants. The fact that we have representatives of both programs, one funded by the European Union's MFF and the other from a completely different source, namely the carbon trading system, is a clear indication that cross-DG and cross-framework programs can come together, and indeed want to come together in order to achieve a common decarbonisation opportunity. And I remind you that the Innovation Fund is not a research and innovation programme. It is about reducing greenhouse gas emissions, but the mutual decarbonisation goal is common to both programmes. And this is foundation enough to want to develop synergies by design between the programmes. It is clear that the creation of the Innovation Fund has provided an excellent opportunity to be seized by projects in key areas supporting the global decarbonisation agenda and specific European Green Deal objectives. It would somehow be wrong not to try and support the transition for tried and tested technologies to progress from Horizon 2020 to the Innovation Fund. The scope and scale of funding under innovation is well suited to a first-of-a-kind deployment. I sometimes compare the transition from Horizon 2020 to the Innovation Fund as a set of stepping stones toward deployment and therefore having a very positive impact on society and the economy. And that is why I'm so pleased that colleagues have reached out and identified mature Horizon projects suitable for the Innovation Fund priorities and many other applications for the sessions today which have joined them from the public procurement. Of course, the Innovation Fund is not the only programme available to fund follow-on or large-scale funding, just as Horizon 2020 is not the only source of mature projects to scale up. Other programmes, whether regional, national or EC funded, would be suitable for Innovation Fund funding, and others do exist for large-scale funding. I mentioned the example, for instance, of the Breakthrough Energy Catalyst Fund. This entire programme is a synergy of funding contributions from Horizon Europe, the Innovation Fund and the Bill Gates Foundation Breakthrough Energy Fund. And I hope that in today's session you will learn the lessons learned from previous applicants and take an active part in the breakout sessions planned for later this morning. This event is a visible, tangible and concrete milestone on a journey to create lasting synergies between the programmes. I wish you not only success in formulating successful applications to the Innovation Fund programme, but also in being pioneers in this journey from ideas to deployment that others can take inspiration from and use as an example and follow in the future. So I wish you a very productive meeting and thank you again, colleagues, for setting it up and with so much thought behind it as well, and to you for participating also as enthusiastically. Floor back to you, Alan. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your introduction, and I think it is just personally a super good to see all three of you here making these presentations this morning, representing a large executive agency, DG Klima and DG Research and Innovation, all on the same floor and all making the same synergy plea to move things from lower TRL to higher TRL and to create these stepping stones. So thank you very much to all of you for your interventions. Thank you, Joanna, for your welcoming words. So in fact now, I think we leave the first part of today's session and we have an infinitely short break, which is maybe not a break at all. So we have a diplomatic break and we come back. Do we come back in 1 or 2 minutes time, or do we just carry on through? So let's just take a 2-minute break and then we join you 2 minutes from now when José and I will elaborate a little bit on synergies in the broader sense. So thank you and we see you in a few moments. So welcome back, everybody. I hope you are hearing us loud and clear. And at this moment, to use the phrase that Joanna Drake used, that the idea of creating stepping stones between programs, the whole concept of synergies, is something that we've been trying to support for some time now in the Commission services. And that's exactly what we wanted to do now, just elaborate a little bit on synergies and the desire to create synergies between programs. And I would do that in the general sense in the next 5 minutes, and then hand over to José Jiménez Mingo, who will talk about specifically the Innovation Fund and some concrete actions that have been happening in that in that forum. So let me just move to a first slide, because many people talk about one program to another program, and I do something a little bit different here in this slide, which is to show the Horizon Europe program not in its traditional 3 pillars of excellence and then societal challenges and then industry, but to try and spread it along the TRL chain that Joanna was mentioning, the low TRL ideas on the left, the mid TRL support working very closely with industry in the centre, and then things like the Innovation Council really working towards the marketplace, creating businesses and growing businesses. And you see the missions and you see partnerships. There are 49 partnerships. Clean hydrogen, clean aviation, clean steel are just examples of partnerships that are supporting that mid-TRL range. And we're all trying to push research ideas through mid-TRL innovation and then to pilot to demonstration. But one thing that came along in the last few years is a series of other programs. So if you take the LIFE program, which has its own environmental and climate goals, but of course it fits with many of the missions and many of the partnerships. If you take Connecting Europe facility, which traditionally was a transport program on transport infrastructure, but then broadened itself into energy and digital, and now specifically supporting charging and fueling stations, it also is supporting innovation and innovative deployment. So results from Horizon 2020 and Horizon Europe could use the infrastructure of the Connecting Europe facility to support deployment. And then you have the Innovation Fund, ideally suited as a program, as we see there, 38 billion euro plus, maybe 40 billion euro, which is it has specific fields, and as long as there is carbon reduction or carbon emission mitigation, then that's a program that could be used. But what we're talking about today is trying to encourage programs to work together in some sort of systematic way. So if I show this line here, one interesting feature that we've been working on, or the Commission services have been working on, is the idea that in the LIFE program, if a mature research project from Horizon 2020 or Horizon Europe or any other community program submits to the LIFE program, as long as it's in line with the objectives of the LIFE program, it receives an additional point in the evaluation. So that award of an additional point in the LIFE program, it's not in itself a solution to guarantee funding, but it is a clear message that a project that's coming from a research and innovation background moving into the LIFE program is a positive step. That's what we would call a clear synergy between programs. If I take the example of the Clean Hydrogen Partnership, who have just published a call a few weeks ago to support hydrogen fuel cells on aircraft. And in fact, at the same time, the Clean Aviation Partnership has developed a call to take hydrogen fuel cells and deploy them on aircraft. Then you can't develop the aircraft if you don't know how the fuel cell is developing, and you can't develop the fuel cell unless you know the constraints of the aircraft. So these synergistic calls that were published both at the same time and cross-referencing each other are calls which are acting in synergy, and that's what we're talking about, program to program or instrument to instrument synergies. I'll give you one more example, and that is that in the September publication of the Connecting Europe facility, there was a specific mention of the 100 climate neutral cities. And in those cities, if there is a city that wants to deploy vehicles or low carbon vehicles, whether electric or hydrogen, and they are looking for infrastructure, if they apply to the Connecting Europe facility in the CEF program, they mention in the legal basis of the call that they can take that into account in the evaluation. So again, a clear indication of two programs working together in synergy. And the final slide would be not only those 4 programs, but in fact there are many. The Breakthrough Energy Catalyst that Joanna Drake mentioned is another program that it potentially could be used for follow-on funding. The huge Recovery and Resilience Facility, over 600 billion euro available and managed by member states, and regional development funding, ERDF, over 200 billion euro. To try and work in synergy with these programs would be a huge opportunity to take research results into deployment. And I give the example of a guideline was recently published by the Commission Services promoting the ability for regional development funds or cohesion funds to work with Horizon Europe. So there's something called the Seal of Excellence, where if you have, so that's just an example of one type of synergy between programs. If something is funded in Horizon Europe and it's sufficient quality, but there isn't enough funding in the budget, then you could use regional development funding, or in some cases recovery package funding, to top up that budget and fund the project. So that Seal of Excellence is one example of using that synergy guideline that was just published between Horizon Europe and cohesion funds. And a concrete example is in the Adaptation to Climate Change mission, where recently there was a call that specifically said if a proposal is sufficiently well scored, but there is not sufficient budget in the budget, not sufficient funding in the budget, ERDF funding could be used to top up that call, and then it's a Seal of Excellence compatible call with the Adaptation to Climate Change mission. So I think hope I give you a view there of what we're talking about when we're talking about program-to-program synergies. So that concept is being supported now at a very high level in the Commission system, and you start to see these synergies by design between instruments and programs. This transition from mature Horizon 2020 projects and eventually Horizon Europe to the Innovation Fund is a logical pipeline, and that's what we're trying to support. And I hope that this workshop will, in the end, generate another one of those red arrows going from Horizon Europe and formerly Horizon 2020 to the Innovation Fund as a logical transition that we should move from lower TRL to deployment. So that was the overview that I wanted to give, and I think I stop at that moment. And just before moving to José, do we take a quick Slido poll? So if I would ask you to go to Slido and have a look at the room, and have a look at this question, and then just type in the word that you think represents your answer, what you think is the answer to this question. And the question is, what complementary funding source, other than the EU Framework Programme for R&I, are you envisaging using? So that whether it's the Cohesion Fund, National Funding, Innovation Fund, CEF, if so, which one? Which are the funding programmes that are uppermost in your mind other than the Horizon Europe or what was Horizon 2020? So I'll give you a minute to type in your words. If anybody has their phone connected at the moment. So, I mean, are any of you thinking about deploying your project through regional development funding? Have any of you been in touch with your local authorities to see whether there's anything in the resilience and recovery package? Are you already preparing an application, possibly to the CEF programme? And beyond the European funding programmes, there are, of course, many, many member state programmes that I wouldn't necessarily know about all of the programmes that are available in your... so that's interesting. That's something's quite specific. Yeah, the projects of common interest, of course, huge opportunity. And this is going to be interesting in a way to see whether it reflects the scale of projects that we're talking about. Because often when we used to talk about Horizon 2020, and we go back a few years, we would be talking about projects which are maybe 5 million, 10 million, 15 million euro. But now when we're talking about the Innovation Fund, or we're talking about the recovery package, or projects of common European interest, you might be talking 50 million, 100 million euro projects. The CEF, again, programme that can fund infrastructure in the tens or hundreds of million. But I see there, Innovation Fund, really quite dominating, which is good news. Exactly. I wonder whether that's biased by this particular audience. Yeah, the IPCEI is interesting. And national funding, okay. ERDF, perhaps smaller, which when you think of the scale of it, could be. I don't see the RRP, the recovery and. Oh yeah, RRF is very small there, the recovery and resilience facility. But when you think that's 600 billion euro, I would have thought that possibly looking to see what's going on in your member state, what's in the plan, and what the government has already put aside, whether that's not an opportunity that could be used for follow-on funding. Okay, I think we have a good feel there, so perhaps we will freeze that, and it's available for people to check back on after the event. And at that moment, thank you for taking part in that, and thank you for joining into Slido. I perhaps should have given a little bit more notice before I launched that. But I think now, let me stop talking about the general case of Synergies and hand it over to José, who is going to be talking about Horizon Europe and Innovation Fund Synergies and how the workshop came about today, and a little bit the background of the logic that could be used and other support actions that have recently been generated. So, José, if you're ready, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Alan, and hello, everybody. My name is José Jiménez. I'm working in DG Clima, coordinating basically the Horizon Europe research activities. And after this nice talk we had before, I'm really reassured by seeing the Innovation Fund so heavily centered in the center, which means we pass the message of what the workshop is about, which is fantastic. There, of course, after Alan's intervention highlighting the different possibilities of synergies that, of course, are needed around different programs and different activities, I would really focus today on the purpose of today's workshop, which is, of course, a very specific one. The area of synergies here is clearly climate change mitigation. And, of course, the two programs in case that we're talking about here are clearly Horizon 2020. I don't say Horizon Europe because, as you can imagine, we are trying to exploit results of projects which have been finalized, and that's why Horizon Europe is not yet in case, but it will be soon. When results will be coming soon, we will continue this experience here anyway. I will help you with my colleagues today to navigate this nice synergies area, and quoting even Joanna Drake, to allow you that you don't fall into the sin of not developing the synergies, and hopefully you don't fall in the valley of death, as she said before. So again, coming back to the real presentation today, I'm here to tell you a few things that we have done already in Horizon Europe and in Horizon 2020 to make this happen. To start with, you may have noticed, some of you might have been seeing the work program of Cluster 4 and Cluster 5. We're going to refer to these clusters because they are the ones which mainly are dealing with the mitigation aspect of climate change, but of course this is applicable to other clusters and other destinations. In Cluster 4 and Cluster 5, already in Horizon Europe, we have introduced new language that you will see in different topics, in which we are already starting to ask actively to consider the synergies in the future within the building up of the projects. Basically, we're asking you there to start including in your project proposals of Horizon Europe the feasibility study, the business plans, and how do you intend to develop the strategies to deploy the technologies. Of course, this is mostly applied in the case of innovation action, which are basically the ones dealing with mature technologies. In particular, in today's action, we're also looking into the Cluster 5 and Cluster 6, and we have put together a number of actions which will be very important. You will hear about them later today as well, in which we conceive this workshop as a big event today, bringing all of you together to start the process, but we will certainly continue to follow this up. And we will do that also mainly through some support we'll get from Cluster 5 and Cluster 4 projects. You will hear about a new topic that we call Coordinated Support Action that will help you to navigate through this process later on, and we will continue repeating this process more later on. Again, today, The issue is the workshop. The workshop, is, as has been explained today so many times, is to develop synergies between mature projects, use the possibilities offered by the Innovation Fund, the possibilities to continue in the research cycle to get to the deployment. And of course, we'll also hear about some innovation, Horizon Europe and Innovation Fund projects which have been already exploring and developing these synergies. We have to say, of course, that synergies in this particular case are obvious and are even by default the obvious thing, because of course when you finish a project and you want to deploy technologies, you have a program which is going to help you to do that, you will normally use it. Sometimes this is not that well known, and that's why we're here to tell you what exactly the possibilities are. Here, again, what I highlight in this slide, again, is very simple, just to show the complementarity of the Horizon Europe and the Innovation Fund. As you can see, of course, the Horizon Europe starts with very basic research to continue into research and innovation activities. We get through the stage of pilots in this case. Some cases, Horizon Europe can fund pilots, and it can even fund demonstration, small-scale project. The innovation comes here bigger, and the size of the arrow is not by chance. It's a much bigger budget program that what we have in research in the case of climate change, of course. And this is where the Innovation Fund will intend to take the result that you have developed previously and scaling up. Scaling up, of course, is a very costly exercise. This is where the industrial activities will take place, and this is why the Innovation Fund normally are much larger in terms of funding available. I'm here going to tell you a bit about something that hopefully will not create too much confusion during the day, but I know if it's the case, come back to us and we'll tell you. I explained to you the CSA's topic that we have put already in the work program 2023 within Cluster 5, which was a joint action between Cluster 4 and Cluster 5, is again, as I said, a specific funding instrument that we will use to help you to continue this journey. When we have already started talking about it and you will have your ideas, we intend to create a number of accompanied structures through these CSAs that will help you to navigate and to continue developing these processes and help you to give you the guidance you may need, and also, more important as well, to share the experiences with other people. So again, we will have 4 independent CSAs, each one for €1 million, and 4 will cover each of them the different activities of the Innovation Fund. You will see that later on in the slides. They will cover the 3 sessions we have put in together, except for the case that for the case of the energy-intensive industries, we will separate it also with the carbon capture storage. We'll have its independent CSA. The goal will be there, again, to invite some of you, again, some of the people which are on the table today and others, to build this consortia that will bring together a number of Horizon 2020 projects, but not only, they will bring also the capabilities needed to develop these activities, will mobilize the expertise that is needed to get together and to put together Innovation Fund proposal, and will also engage with the different parts of the research and innovation placeholders. So again, here, you will see, and we invite you to read the topic in detail, because of course the topic is going to be a competitive topic, which will be evaluated by CINEA colleagues on the basis of the quality of the project proposals. And we will certainly hope that you will find a good tool to continue this process later on. If it works. No, it's the other way around. There we go. Again, as a kind of summary here, this is just to summarize what we're doing today. Today we are in this workshop in which we started already preparing in August 2022. Today, in February 2023, we have managed to mobilize, and it has been an intensive effort. I will really thank CINEA, and not only CINEA, but also the other colleagues of DGRTD, the joint undertaking, the different activities in the Process for Planet industry. And of course, I need to mention in particular my colleague Philip Hawkins, which has been the one which has been making this happen since the very beginning. So again, on that stage, we have really found out and invited a number of people in the different sessions. We have reached around 350 participants registered, which is quite nice. And we will later on break into different sessions to start developing the activities. Yep, I'm almost finished. So there we go. And then concluding this here, of course, we will later on start the coordinated support action with the 4 activities that will lead to dedicated consortia. Again, highlight, keep in mind the deadline of 18th of April 2023, which is the deadline for the call, and it will be really fantastic that some of you will get together and put together these proposals, and we will certainly be happy to work with you later on. Having said that, I thank you all. I respect my timing, and I pass the word to Alan back again. Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you very much for that presentation. And I think you do the right thing to mention the fact that there is a CSA that exists and is published in the work programme as another concrete element, if you like. It's not just Synergies as a desire. It's Synergies is something that we really want to work on. And as you say, this is the beginning, not the end. So thank you very much for that presentation. And let's do another live poll. So if I could ask people outside, even if we're a couple of minutes late, let's just invest the time in asking you to go to Slido again and give us the one-word answer that you think addresses the answer to this question. So the question is, what would you say are the biggest barriers and challenges for research and innovation projects in the EU to reaching deployment? So what are the biggest barriers to reaching deployment? So I guess most of you who are watching are associated with a project that has developed something which is either from a research background or an innovation background, might have some sort of TRL that could be drawn into deployment. But what is the thing that is stopping you, in your view, from achieving that? So that could be technological, it could be the environment we work in, it could be financial, it could be legal, it could be regulatory, all sorts of barriers that are stopping people going through. It would be interesting to know whether lack of funding is perceived as a barrier. When we showed the various programs that are around at the moment, Clara mentioned 40 billion for the Innovation Fund. If you add up all the programs on my slide, you had nearly €1 trillion. So I think that there is public money around in the system. Okay, so there are a few more participants typing. It's just starting to tail down now, but in fact, there doesn't seem to be a great front runner. Lots of scattered risks and complexity, funding, as you say, regulatory, who owns it, intellectual property. Funding is there as a big contribution. That's interesting. I mean, when you look at the number of venture capital and out in the outside world, how much funding there is available at the moment, particularly for innovative or take the field of hydrogen, there's quite a lot of funding out there. And we saw the scale of some of the projects that were funded under the first innovation call, under the large scale. These were very big projects. So let's say funding and regulatory are the two front runners there, but it is still rather scattered. Lack of strategy. I don't see lack of synergies. Okay. Okay, so we just give it another 20 seconds, and then we would stop and we would freeze the live poll, and we can take that into consideration later. So I would draw the live poll to a close. So yeah, regulatory, national support funding. And let's close up there. And now we should probably, in terms of staying with our agenda, we should carry on with the presentations that were in the original agenda. So in a moment, I would hand the floor to Maria Velkova, who is acting head of unit in C2 at DG Climate Action, and we'll spend a few moments. I think this is a very important part of this morning's session, elaborating the actual opportunities that are coming under the Innovation Fund, and then a little bit about lessons learned from the past that we will move on to after that. So are we okay to stop this slide now, and we move to, and I give the floor to Maria. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Alan, and thank you everybody who is online and listening carefully and participating interactively in the slide questions. Actually, I would prefer to have an more interactive discussion on all these words that you put there, but this gives an idea to us for next perhaps webinar where we can really sit together with you and understand better what are really the barriers that stop you. Because what we will do now, me and Roman next to me, is to explain to you the Innovation Fund a little bit more in detail. You most probably know quite a lot about it. You already heard quite a lot in the introductory words of the different interlocutors here. And we actually have very detailed info days at the opening of each call for proposals. So when you become ready to apply, there's plenty of information. And in interest of time, I will have to go rather quickly through my slides, and I will try to point you to some key elements for today. And then I move on. Just a reminder, indeed, why we're here. This is the pathway to climate neutrality as it comes from our models. It shows that it is possible to get to climate neutrality, but we need to work hard. Everybody that is listening here is contributing, and we hope with the Innovation Fund we are actually able to help key technologies to commercialize. And the Innovation Fund is one element of many of the European Green Deal. Most probably all of you have heard the objectives of the European Green Deal. I'm not here to repeat them, but just to tell you that our projects that we select in the Innovation Fund contribute to many of the objectives of the European Green Deal, which in turn is there actually to help us to reach climate neutrality while preserving competitiveness of our industries and the well-being of our citizens. I move to the Innovation Fund directly because it's, as I say, we don't have too much time, and it's also important to really hear from all participants in our agenda, and you will hear later on from two successful applicants. Perhaps that will be much more informative than what we can say here. But just to remind that the Innovation Fund has eligible sectors which are stemming from the EU ETS directive, and the main ones are on the slide, and they are energy-intensive industries, renewable energy, energy storage, carbon capture, use and storage. But we will have actually new sectors joining us from 24, so from the next calls in practice, next large-scale call, which would be maritime and aviation, because you know that ETS, the emission trading scheme, has been extended to maritime sector. Aviation is already part of it, but now even contributing to Innovation Fund. Innovation Fund, just a few key elements in addition to what you have heard. You heard the 40 billion. Actually, we don't know how much money we have because we monetize actually weekly allowances and we accumulate. So this is an estimate, but it's more or less what we expect to have up until 2030. So this is one important message. You are working on your research projects or have finished, but perhaps you're still not ready to apply to Innovation Fund. Come when you're ready up until 2030. Most probably the program will continue even after, but of course we're interested to see you earlier, rather earlier than later. What we are able to support is actually the funding gap of these projects. The projects are actually first-of-a-kind commercial. This is more or less the projects we can support. It can be that we can support large pilots. It can be that we can support second and more of a kind. But what we can support is actually up to 60% of the funding gap. So this would be the difference in the costs and revenues from a technology that is mature, commercial, and using fossil fuels, basically a polluting technology. What is important to understand also is that we can give up to 40% of the grant before financial close or at financial close. And then the rest, actually, the 60% of remaining of the grant is distributed until the end of the monitoring period with us, which can be between 3 and 10 years. An important difference from Horizon is actually that you can apply as a single applicant. So one of the companies that you had before in a Horizon project can apply. But of course, you can come and apply as a consortium. There's no limitation on that. There is limitation on where the project should be situated. The project has to be located in the EU, in Norway or Iceland. We are publishing annual calls for proposals for both large and small-scale projects. I'll come back to you later. We will introduce a new category of projects called medium scale. This comes again from the EU ETS revision, and we will operationalize it this year. We can provide also project development assistance. For the moment, this assistance is limited to projects that have passed the competition but are not sufficiently mature. So they're innovative, they have potential to reduce emissions, but they are not sufficiently mature. We will expand this project development assistance in this revision of the delegated regulation this year. Actually, even at the moment, EIB can provide project development assistance more on the financial maturity for projects in the area of renewable energy and CCS. So information is available on the website of the EIB, and I'm regretting not to put the link here. But do come back to us if you're interested. I will stop here on that slide and continue. You've seen various different graphs which say more or less the same this morning. So just repeating that Innovation Fund is one of many programs helping you, hopefully helping projects actually cross this so-called famous valley of death. This is where we are. We don't use actually technology readiness levels in our calls for proposals, but as you're quite used to those TRLs, that's why we have put them there. It's somewhere between 6 and 9. If you are somewhere between 6 and 9, you're likely to be the right technology readiness level to apply for Innovation Fund. We also use commercial readiness level, because after TRL, what is important is actually how ready you are to be on the market, to sell your product. So I invite you to look at definitions of commercial readiness level. We actually there to support you in early commercial readiness levels. So before you're fully commercial, before you need any public support to continue. So I won't go very much into details into award criteria because Roman will cover them more in detail. Just to say that our evaluation is in a way similar to the evaluation you have gone through in Horizon, but with different award criteria. And that is important to understand. So we look at degree of innovation, at the potential of your technology to reduce emissions, at project maturity, which is key, at scalability and at cost efficiency. We do have some bonus points for the projects that can offer net carbon removals, additional greenhouse gas savings, or contribute to additional renewable electricity. More details later. We have currently an open call. Most probably, if you're here with us, you're not ready to apply, but in any case, it is open. This call actually is slightly different from the first calls we published in that it has dedicated topics to address the Repower EU plan priorities. And I will move to the next slide just to explain very briefly what these priorities are in this call. Because normally in the first calls we had a general topic where so long as you fall in the eligible sectors and you meet, you can potentially meet our award criteria, you're eligible. Now we have a general topic for completely bottom-up approach for projects that don't fall in one of the three topics that we are specifically calling for. And the topics are one on electrification and hydrogen applications, both production and application in industry. one topic on clean tech manufacturing of components for renewable energy and energy storage. A dedicated topic which can be particularly interesting for Horizon projects, which is on mid-sized pilots. So these are pilots, so lower TRL actually projects, so not 8 or 9, but maybe rather 6 or 7, but too expensive for Horizon Europe program. So this is more or less what we're trying to achieve there with a cap of 40 million euro of the grant. And what we have is actually 3 billion, and the 3 billion are split into these 4 topics that I described now. And if we don't have enough projects that meet all thresholds in one or another topic, the budget will be used for the other topics. So I won't go in more details in that. Just I will announce actually that we are working to publish also a call for small-scale projects. What I didn't say is actually the threshold, what makes the difference between a small and a large-scale project. The current threshold is 7.5 million capex. So any project with less than this capex, 7.5 million, can apply for the small scale. Any project with higher capex has to apply in the large-scale call. And this year, I mentioned we are revising the regulation on Innovation Fund. We are likely to revise this threshold because so far experience shows that it is too low. So we will introduce medium scale and we will increase the small scale call threshold. But for the forthcoming call, we remain with this threshold. The call will be published on 30th of March. CINEA is busy, our agency is busy preparing the call. We will have continuity from the previous call. So if you're interested, you can look actually at the small scale call of last year. The conditions are largely the same. One last slide from me, and I'll pass the floor to Roman. We actually, I believe this Breakthrough Energy Catalyst venture was mentioned earlier. We are actually in partnership with Breakthrough Energy in a fund called Catalyst. What is this about actually? It is a very interesting fund that can actually support projects, very innovative projects, which have a great potential to reduce the green premium in 4 distinct areas: renewable hydrogen, sustainable aviation fuels, long-duration energy storage, and direct air capture. There is a continuously open call. It is open. The information is available on the Breakthrough Energy website. The link is on the slide. And you can see there is relatively light application procedure. We have in total 1 billion euros up until year 27 to give to these projects, like mostly in equity or in guarantees on our end. So if you're interested, please visit the website and apply. But we go back to Innovation Fund because this is why you are here today. I can just pass.
So thank you so much, Maria, because you gave a very, very comprehensive overview of the programme there, and there was an awful lot of information in there, and it's so nice to see that there are the priorities that you've been raising in the large call, so you focus on hydrogen, but also the shout out for mid-sized pilots, which is excellent, and the fact that there may be flexibility in the future, because as you say, those thematic things are coming through. So I think that was a very good overview, and if people could have the time to go back and look over that again, that would be a very, very useful thing to do. But now it's time to introduce Roman Dubrova, who is the head of unit of Innovation Fund at the CINEA agency, so the actual agency who are implementing the programme. And I think the idea of lessons learned from the past this is a really good opportunity to elaborate on those. So Roman, if I may, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Alan, and good morning still, everybody. Very pleased to be here. I don't have much time, and this is an awfully big topic that really we can spend days on discussing. So I will really try to condense the messages into a few that we think are important for you to hear and follow up. as you may have heard from the previous speeches, in the Innovation Fund, we are looking for investment projects. So the logic of the Innovation Fund is that we pay upon delivery. The greenhouse gas emissions must be reduced as the outcome of the project. This means that you need to backtrack in your mind, and these greenhouse gas emissions must happen through physical change in assets, in infrastructure, in production patterns, and the projects must produce their outcome and sell it on the market so that it's also economically feasible. And altogether, all these elements should happen so that at the end of the day, your greenhouse gas emissions are really reduced. And we see the avoidance because 60% of the grant that we pay out to projects is related actually to how much greenhouse gas emissions you will achieve at the end of your monitoring period. I think it's very important message because in essence, what I'm trying to say is that you need to switch your mindset from the one of a researcher to the one of an investor. And this is also how we are assessing and analyzing the projects that we get in our calls, in our applications. We are trying to do the same job as any other investor, any other banker would do when assessing the project propositions. So we are, in essence, trying to balance out, on one hand side, the elements of technology innovation, or process innovation, business model innovation, through to the market practice in real term, in real operational environment, in real economic context, where we really would like to see those projects succeeding and placing their products on the European market in particular, because that's where we are trying to get through with our policies. Now, why I have taken this slide, it is to show you that what I just mentioned about sort of a DNA and the logic of the Innovation Fund is very much enshrined also in the documentation elements that we request. And that is an important message before you're actually starting to prepare your application, to already look very carefully what is it that we are actually looking at, what is it that we are actually asking. You may be very well familiar with Part A and Part B, because this is a common practice across all EU programs done through e-grants or tender and portal site. We also have a Part C, which is a novelty with the Innovation Fund. That is our list of KPI indicators, and this is very important so that we can actually read through the story of the project as it goes through, because those indicators will change, your economies change, your technologies change, and so on. And then we have many annexes there that are listed, but they are very little here. I'm very sorry for this, that they are nearly not readable. But just to touch base on those, because they are different to what you may have seen in the Horizon Europe. So first, we are asking for a detailed financial information file. That is a template that has been developed for you. It's an integrated Excel document that calculates your relevant costs and includes the basic financial data about you, about your consortium, about your partners, which are essential to read through the investment logic. And that's different from Horizon. You haven't seen those there. So please have a good look into those files. They are well structured. They're quite easy to navigate. But again, they require this investment logic. And then attached to that, we also ask for financial model, which is a standard practice for any investment project that you would do anyway. And those two need to be consistent. And that is essentially your business card, the business card of the project, if I may put it like this, because through those data, through those information, we can read through what are you actually doing and what are you actually applying for. Then we are asking for well-developed feasibility study. Obviously, I'll get there when we'll be talking about technical maturity. The business plan, which is, again, a key prerequisite for any investment operation, any investment proposition. We have very detailed greenhouse gas emissions avoidance calculator that may seem very complex, but essentially it is not. If you spend some time on it, if you really read very well the methodology and browse through the calculators that we have developed for you, this is all based on life cycle analysis model. Okay, so we are comparing essentially your project with a situation without your project, and the differential is what you are avoiding during the monitoring period, and we are actually looking to those things that change. Okay, those that don't change, we ignore. So that's why I'm saying it's not so complex, even though there are nuances that you need to understand well. Then we have a knowledge sharing plan, which is a novelty also compared to Horizon, because we are going slightly deeper. And the reason for that is that we would like to ensure that we create a community of people who share information among themselves, because we are dealing with innovation, we are dealing with market, and we need to grow that market going forward. And then, as usual, Gantt chart and participant information that you may well know. Now, moving to the award criteria. So again, Maria browsed through them. What are we looking at here, and why we have those? Essentially, we are trying to give you an opportunity to present the project from a 360-degree perspective. And for us to read your project through 360-degree perspective, that's why we have elements of innovation. So degree of innovation is a criterion where we look to what extent your project goes beyond the state of the art. And I'll get there in the next slide. Then we have a greenhouse gas emission as a basis. That is the expected outcome of a project, both in terms of absolute, relative emissions, and then also quality of and certainty of the calculation. This is also to protect you, because if you have a mistake in the calculation and the project goes through, then we will have an issue, because the payments that we provide, as I said, 60% of the grant is tied to those greenhouse gas emissions. So we have this in to make sure that those projects that pass through are good, are correct, and we can go on with them. Then project maturity, obviously technical, financial, operational. From technical perspective, from legal, financial, economic setup point of view, and then operational, whether your project can essentially be built and operated on time, on budget, in the framework that you are proposing and describing in your proposition. The scalability criterion, which again is there to allow even smaller scale, very innovative, potentially high on costs, but still with very good growth potential, those projects to compete and score well. So the scalability, where we are looking to growth potential of your project, replicability potential, but also that's a novelty. As of the current goals, we are very much looking into any impediments to scalability, whether it comes to raw materials, whether it comes to geographical locations, because not every technology can be placed anywhere in the world. So that is there also to balance out those that can be very scalable with those that maybe has a lesser scalability potential, but maybe very well mature, and so on. And then we have cost efficiency, which is a standard assessment of how much does the ton of CO2 cost the public purse, or how much grant do you need for 1 ton of CO2 avoided. So altogether, these 5 criteria really give a good balancing possibilities, because we have really wide scale of projects, very different sectors, very wide scope for technologies. And we are really trying to establish a level playing field. So any innovative project that is sufficiently mature, and this is, I think, our golden rule, are more than welcome to apply. And please do so, as Maria said, it is important learning exercise as well. We are still somehow used in Europe, wherever our proposition fails, to put blame on us. I mean, look how others do it. No, if we fail, we go ahead, we learn, and we move to the next stage. So even those projects that didn't make it in the past, we see them going back. We hear many times from projects that did not get the funding from the innovation, that they have succeeded elsewhere, because what they actually developed helped them to attract others to finance their project or attract partners. And that is our objective here. So these are the award criteria in the fast train. Now, if we go through them with a couple of messages as regards the lessons learned, maybe I would stop with some of those here and there. On the degree of innovation, so again, to what degree your proposition, whether this is technology, whether this is product, whether this is business innovation, to what extent it goes beyond what is the state of the art applicable to you. Okay? So we are not regulating how far you should go. We are checking whether you go beyond what is already there, the state of the art. And the key message here is that really the onus of the work, and the most of the time probably that I can recommend to any project coming from Horizon to us, please spend good time in explaining what the state of the art is. So what is your benchmark against which you are comparing your technology? Many projects fail because it was unclear, it was not well described, it was not evidenced. Okay, we are looking here really about truth. What is the performance that you have achieved in the previous stages, because that will be the benchmark against which you compare, and make this very clear for the evaluators. You see the scale here. We are not supporting projects that bring in incremental innovation. That is very low. We are going beyond incremental. So intermediate, strong, very strong, or breakthrough technologies. I hear some. Do we still have? No, okay, the echo is gone. Thank you. Okay, and you see how the scale works. The definitions are provided in the call text in the annex, so please go well through them, read them well. Now, complementing what I just said about the importance to describe your state-of-the-art well, obviously, please also make sure that you describe and evidence well what is it that you do, what is your innovation, how does it go beyond what is the state of the art, in which elements it is. I think it's important that we all understand that we are not a science program here. Okay, we are not PhD students. We are not working thesis here. We are developing business propositions. So it is important that we state factual, based on evidence, and providing the evidence very much related to performance, to operational innovations, unique design features, and so on, as relevant to your proposal. And that's why I put it also here. The evaluators must be convinced that what you are proposing is actually feasible, that it actually is based on data, on information that is there, that can also convince them to understand that, yes, this is something that is very innovative and we can give a good score to that. Now, the greenhouse gas emissions avoidance. We have a bespoke methodology to calculate the greenhouse gas emissions avoided. So key message here is, please have a good look into that methodology. Invest time to read it through. It is quite logical. We have the specific calculation tools that we developed for you. Couple of examples that you can learn from. We have plenty of material available. Maria mentioned our info days. We are organizing bespoke events. Everything is online. We have recordings, slide decks, tutorials that you have at your disposal. So please invest some time to look at those and read through the material that is out there. We have a help desk whenever the call is open. So now we have the call open until 16th of March. The help desk is there. We receive many questions related to greenhouse gas emissions. So any project-specific question, wherever you don't understand, we have a help desk function for that, and we are replying to every single applicant in that respect. Now, there are a couple of lessons learned, recommendations on the greenhouse gas emissions. As I mentioned, the avoidance potential is calculated as a difference between what your project emits or manages to remove compared to the situation without your project. So it's a differential. Hence, very important is to set your reference case well. And again, we have a methodology for that will guide you through this. Another point are the emission factors that we are using. If those two elements are not well established, then your calculations are wrong, and we cannot accept them. So please have a very good look through the methodology and make this very, very clear and in line with what is required. Then the question of project boundaries. If you are calculating additional greenhouse gas emissions, make sure that they are, again, in line with the methodology and well placed in the calculators that we have developed for you. Okay, so that's on the greenhouse gas emission. Then on the technical maturity, the onus here is on evidence. Again, we are talking about the key question: can what you propose deliver the output that you expect in the time, in the space that you are intending to use for your project? Therefore, it's important to provide robust evidence, very well underpin your assumptions behind your expectations about the output, to give us a confirmation, essentially, that it is technically feasible. So what I'm saying I will do in the monitoring period, this will be the amount of outputs, the number of products I will produce and put on the market, that it is technically possible in the operational environment in which you work. We are essentially looking at performance data. So So not so much about long descriptions, but really be factual, concise, and focused on performance, underpinned by any information that you can get. Be from the early start in connection with your potential suppliers and off-takers. Make sure that you have your technical characteristics based on, for instance, quotes from your potential suppliers and so on. And very important, which maybe we are also slightly different compared to Horizon, is that we very much base our assessment on the analysis and mitigation of risks. Why? Because, again, we speak about investment cases. If we don't know the risks that are there and we don't mitigate them, there is a problem. Obviously, they will come at some point of time. So please don't take this lightly. Again, we have very precise application form with the heat map and everything, heat map on risks, which is there. You can use it. Okay? On the financial maturity, yes, I mean, with the logic of an investment project, what is important here is that what you, again, put in your application is consistent and is very well embedded in evidence. So we have 7 golden rules that you can see on screen. It must be clear to the evaluators when we assess the projects that your project can reach financial close at the latest within 4 years after signature of the contract. Financial close for us is the moment when the final investment decision is signed, but all other contracts that are necessary to actually start the construction and operation of the project are there and signed. So it's a very important benchmark that we have. We have it very clearly established. So you need to convince that you are ready to be there at the time as you propose in your application. Okay, so those 7 golden rules, I will not read them all. You have them on the slide. But we are essentially looking at the project as any other investor would do. And the more evidence you provide, the better. And especially for large-scale projects, it is important that you very much follow the relevant cost methodology when it comes to calculating your relevant cost, because that is the basis to calculate your grant. And again, we have the methodology there. It's important that you understand the methodology. If not, we have tutorials available for you on our website, and we have the help desk. In case you have any questions, don't hesitate to use those tools. Operational maturity. If you look at the screen, you see this graph, which essentially is what we are looking at. It's a helicopter picture of your project, convincing the evaluators, those who assess your project, that you can actually deliver the project on the market, in time, on budget, and that you are ready to address any impediments, any risks that you analyze and mitigate in your proposal. And this is really important, to analyze the surroundings of your project. Who are your partners? Who are your critical stakeholders, whether it comes to suppliers, off-takers, financiers, insurers, and so on? They all will be part of your family. They all will somehow influence whether your project will or will not manage it on time, on budget, and in the framework as you propose. So this is important to have in mind. And again, the question of risks and their mitigations, an important element to look at. Please be realistic here, because what we see many times that we tend to be very optimistic, especially when we probably think of research projects. Here, if your permitting is not delivered in time, your project may collapse. So make sure that you give due attention to these issues and you enshrine them well in your planning when you apply to the Innovation Fund. On scalability, I already mentioned that here we look for the growth potential. How can your project be scaled up? And you have all the elements on the slide. And cost efficiency, here, as I said, we have one integrated tool that calculates your relevant costs. Important message, don't change it. It's there for you, and it calculates that for you, but you need to follow the guidance that is provided in the tool, in the methodology. So please make sure that you familiarize yourself with those. If not, there is a help desk. We can provide you additional guidance as need be. And to conclude, so our key message probably here is, please be consistent. The application is not an easy exercise. I acknowledge that. We are quite a complex program, quite demanding program, but on the other hand, we are also financing huge amounts of money to single projects. And as Maria said, we do not regulate how you organize yourselves. This is your business, this is your proposition. Whether you come alone or whether you come with partners, it's totally up to you. We can provide large amounts of grant for the projects, hundreds of millions that can be paid to single project, but that also requires that the project is very well prepared. So consistency for us is a key. You will see that in the different application forms and documents, there are several references, and you need to make sure that they kind of click, okay? That there is a consistent story behind, that your technical proposition is in tune with your financial proposition, which is in tune with your operational expectations. And if that story is there, if it is realistic, if it is consistent, then the project has a good chance to get a good score. So again, just to encourage any innovative and sufficiently mature project, please come. We have calls out every year, as Maria mentioned. We have a big call that is open until 16th of March. The next small-scale call will open on the 30th of March until 19th of September. And we will also organize an info day in April and specific workshop where we will try to guide especially small-scale applicants how to do their application in July. And I would stop here, and I'm really happy to take any questions. Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you very much, Roman, and thank you very much for that very comprehensive overview. And in fact, too many points for me to try and summarise and reiterate. But you really mentioned the importance of financial. Really mentioned the importance of knowing your level and how innovative, breakthrough rather than incremental, and the CO2 mitigation calculation is so important to the proposal. So I would recommend anybody goes back and looks over those slides, and in particular those last few summary slides. So thank you so much for that. It was really worth taking the time to go through that in a good level of detail. So I think we now break to one of the sessions where one of our external contributors will make a contribution on the real life case of using the Innovation Fund. So I think we go in fact to Ragnar Bragdottir for CarbFix. Would that be right? Is the next speaker available? And so CarbFix, which may not be the name that is in, I'm not sure if it's Berger Sigfusson, but I think it might be Ragnar Bragdottir. But I remember well the CarbFix project. And I remember it being signed back in, I can't recall now. Ah, very good, Ragnar, you're there with us. I remember it being signed at the time, and a series of projects that came after it. And I have to do a very difficult thing, which is to say that if you could focus on the lessons learned that you think that people would find very useful, rather than a long story about how the various projects moved on, because we are probably compressing our time a little bit. But it's, the message you will send is real practical information, and so we certainly don't want to truncate you and your messages. So if I may hand you the floor, and Ragnar, if you're ready to take over, the floor is yours.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Can you hear me?
We hear you
okay,
fine.
perfect.
Yeah, perfect.
Yeah. Can I see my slides? Ah, thank you. Yeah, so good morning. Ragnar Björk, as I mentioned, I'm the Innovation Project Manager at CarbFix and the project coordinator for both of our Innovation Fund projects, the small-scale project Silverstone and the large-scale project Coda Terminal. Next slide, please. Yeah, just a little background on CarbFix. We are basically a carbon capture and mineral storage company where we turn CO2 into carbonates underground in less than 2 years. We are just imitating and accelerating natural processes, and in result provide a permanent and safe carbon storage solution. Next slide, please. Here you can see CarbFix in action. So always a lot of things going on. Next slide, please. So just a little introduction on our two Innovation Fund projects. So first, the project Silverstone, which is a small-scale project where CarbFix and OnPower received a grant of 3.9 million euros from the Innovation Fund, where the aim is to scale up and design and build a optimized CarbFix capture plant with the capacity to capture about 150,000 tons of CO2 over the course of the 6-year operational phase under the grant agreement. The project started just over a year ago, and the new capture plant will be commissioned in 2025. Next is the large-scale project, the Coda Terminal, which is a cross-border carbon capture and storage hub to be built in Iceland, where we are capturing CO2 at industrial sites in Northern Europe and shipping it to the terminal, where it will be unloaded and injected into a network of nearby injection wells. The Innovation Fund grant was for 115 million euros and started now in January. The project will be scaled up, as you can see here, in 3 phases, 500,000 tons of CO2 a year in 2026, 1 million ton in 2028, and 3 million ton in 2031. Yeah, but these projects didn't come out of the blue, as we have been talking about today. They are the result of multiple prior projects that fed into these Innovation Fund applications. Next slide, please. So this is our timeline from research to deployment. It has been a long time, but still not that long. We only started CarbFix in 2007, and in 2011 we got the FP7 grant, CarbFix, where we took the technology to TRL 6. In 2017 we got the Science for Clean Energy, CarbFix 2, and then in 2018 the GECKO grant, which took the technology to TRL 8. But of course there are other aspects that play a role in our timeline, such as publications, collaborations with other partners, non-EU grants, patents, etc. So today I'm going to introduce a little bit how the CarbFix 2 project and the GECKO project fed into these Innovation Fund applications. So next slide, please. So for CarbFix 2, the main focus was on direct air capture, onshore injection, offshore injection, and the economic feasibility of the entire CCS cycle. And of course, dissemination and public acceptance was also a huge part of this project. So how did this specific project benefit us for the Innovation Fund? Next slide, please. If we look at Silverstone, the onshore development of the technology benefited us greatly when it came to scale up our operations at Hellisheiði. The studies on the feasibility of the CCS cycle helped us make an informative decision on scaling up the operations. And of course, public acceptance always plays a huge role in innovation projects where new technology is tested. Next slide, please. For Coda Terminal, the experiments and the feasibility of using seawater for CarbFix will hopefully benefit us. We are currently testing it in another project, Project Seastone, funded by Eurostars and the Icelandic Technical Fund, which will most likely feed into Coda Terminal in the future. The economic feasibility of the CCS cycle is, of course, of great importance in a CCS chain project like Coda, where we are testing the shipping of CO2 to Iceland as a part of the CCS chain. So CO2 has never been shipped to Iceland for this reason. So there's a lot of lessons learned from that. And again, I cannot overstate the importance of dissemination and public acceptance at this stage. Next slide, please. There you can see the entire CarbFix 2 project. I haven't gone into Orca and Mammoth, which are projects developed and in cooperation with Climeworks out of CarbFix 2. Next slide. Now for GECKO, or the Geothermal Emission Control Project, which is currently ongoing but has been very beneficial in our Innovation Fund journey. The main aim is to lower emission from geothermal power generation by capturing them for either reuse or storage. But many other aspects feed into this aim, for example, the feasibility of using CarbFix both in older basalt and in different rock formations. further optimization of the carbon capture technology on increasing its flexibility and capture efficiency. Also, the re-injection well design re-evaluated reducing the deployment time of the CarbFix in new reservoirs used in relation to the single-step carbon capture and injection technology. And finally, quantifying subsurface reactions and optimizing and developing new monitoring methods. Next slide, please. And here you can see this again, how this feeds into Project Silverstone. Obviously, lower emissions from geothermal power plant is of great importance, as well as improved re-injection design and optimization on that technology, as well as quantifying subsurface reaction and just having a broader knowledge on what happens underground. And for next slide, please. And for Coda Terminal, it's similar. Let's say that where Silverstone is a volcano with a very fresh basalt, while the injection zone for Coda Terminal is not in the currently active area, making the basalt a little older than we are used to. So studies in this older basalt is very important for Coda Terminal. And of course, the same as before, optimized re-injection design is also beneficial, as well as developing new monitoring methods more suitable for the conditions found at the Coda Terminal injection sites. Next slide, please. So here is the overview for Gecko. My colleague Bergur Sigfússon will actually go deeper into the Gecko project later today in the breakout session, so stay tuned for that. Next slide. So just a quick overview. So for Project Silverstone, these former H 2020 projects showed us that the technology was ready for industrial applications at the Hellisheiði power plant. And it was a logical this decision to choose the Innovation Fund. We had been, as you can see, in a lot of grants before, and it just made sense to continue the journey with them. We knew that the technology, as I said, we knew the technology was ready for an industrial application, but the challenge with Innovation Fund application was to illustrate that its readiness. I mean, we knew it was ready on the industrial scale, but at the same time identify the opportunities on where the technology can be made more robust, more efficient, safer in operation and maintenance, and more applicable over a large range of injection stream chemistries. But at the same time be confident that this was possible and yeah, but still not knowing everything. Next slide, please. For Coda Terminal, I mean, this was our dream for a continued scale-up of the CarbFix technology. So isolated puzzles related to the CarbFix technology had been studied and demonstrated in these former H 2020 projects. But it was a huge step from an H 2020 project to this large-scale innovation fund. So the main challenge was to fulfill all the different requirements needed for the applications, because the technology is quite new, the industry is new, and in some cases it was proved hard to obtain the requested documents. Next slide, please. I hope you can see this. I think you have to press again on enter. Nay. Can we try that one more time? Okay. I'm sorry you can't be... Oh, can you go back? Can you go one slide back, please? I'm sure you can't see this video, but this is how it looks. You can see the picture here. This is how it looks the evening before a big deadline. The video before showed when we submitted the application for Coda Terminal the first time. We had not delivered anything into the portal at this time, so this was our first official delivery. I'm happy to say that this was a rather failed way of delivering due to a participant portal error. So for our lessons learned, please submit a draft application a few days before the deadline. It's very stressing and nerve-wracking to get an error on your entire document the night before a deadline. Yeah, start early. You never know what can come up. In our case, COVID, that was still a thing, March or January, February last year. So our timeline of making all these documents ready kind of, yeah, didn't go as planned. And it's good to get a good overview of the internal and external workload and be sure to give you some room for improvement on that. Scope the additional documents needed as soon as possible. This was an error on our part. We started this a bit too late in our work and realized that we didn't have the time to do some of the documents, but we managed to do it in the end, though. It's good to seek advice from the national contact points really early. Most of you do have those national contact points, and they can help you tremendously in understanding the call text better and get a different perspective from what you have. And it's just so important to be confident in your project. I mean, this is your project. You know everything about it, and you just need to get it through in the best way possible. And for us, we applied for the large-scale grant the first call with CODA and did not succeed. So if you don't succeed in the first time around, remember that you have now identified the strengths and weaknesses of your project, which is always beneficial. And I mean, you have had Innovation Fund reading over it and commenting, so you have ways to improve, and you have had this third party of helping you improve your project. You can use the application document as part of a baseline for future applications, either as a part of EU funding, Horizon 2020, Europe, or Innovation Fund. And this is a huge team building exercise, and I mean, it's fun. It's hard. It's very, very hard, but in the end, when you put in the work, it's always good. And hopefully this could be your future. Next slide, please. Where you get the headlines in your country and seeing that you have this tremendous work has resulted in this, basically. Yeah, so next slide. Thank you.
Ragnar Björk, thank you very much for your presentation there. You give some real life experience of how the project has been developed, and I found it very interesting that you have used a number of programs and moved from FP7 to Horizon 2020 through to Innovation Fund, and then you give some real life experience, as in apply several days before the deadline. Don't just leave it to the very last moment, because even you were sounding as though you did it a few days before, but you were still trying to get things in at the last moment. Now, so I thank you very much for your contribution. Now, in terms of timing, so thank you. We have to meet our 11:30 deadline to reach the breakout rooms. So I was just wondering whether we would take now Jan, or do we take 2 questions at this point? So I think there are a number of questions that are available. So could we break to 2 questions now, or Jan now? Okay, so now we change, and I say that Jan, let's bring you in at this moment. As I say, open your microphone. Oh, sorry, so that Jan Teulen. If we could bring you in now, I know that you're from Heidelberg Cement, and you have one of the projects that you'd like to give us some real-life experience from, but we have unfortunately run a little bit late, so if I could ask you to focus on the real-life experience that you are bringing to colleagues, because we do want to try and squeeze in a couple of questions before 11:30. So for the project ANRAV, Jan, the floor is yours.
Yes, thank you. I hope you can hear me.
We do hear you, yes.
Yeah. Okay, perfect. Because we had a bit the technical problem, but luckily we are better in managing CCUS projects than IT stuff. But we'll try it like this. So let me take you a bit how we benefited from Horizon Europe funding programs and how we leveraged on it towards our EU Innovation Fund call. So if you go to the next slide, please. I want just to show that concrete is a material that we use everywhere. And I just want to highlight concrete is a material that is locally produced and locally sold. And we need also then to have local solutions. It's not that we have one solution. Next slide. I hope you can hear me well still?
Yes, go ahead.
Okay, perfect. So the next slide shows what is the challenge for the cement industry in terms of CO2 emissions. We have the majority of our CO2 emissions coming out of the process. That means, we are on slide number 3. So the process emissions are the majority of the emissions, and 1/3 of the emissions is from the fuel. So even when we abate the fuel, we still have the process emissions to deal with. And that takes me to the next slide. The technology that we are applying, one of the technologies that we are applying is based on what we call oxy-fuel technology. And I wanted to show you that if you have a normal kiln, we are burning our fuels with ambient air, and that means in the flue gas there is a mixture of nitrogen and oxygen. And CO2, sorry, and then you need to do a lot of effort to capture the CO2. However, if you click once more, you can see if you replace the ambient air by oxygen, then if you replace the ambient air by oxygen, then you concentrate automatically the CO2 in the flue gas, because pure oxygen does not have the nitrogen, so there is much less nitrogen in the system, and that eases a lot the capture of the CO2, obviously. Yeah? And then you simply can compress it and ship it out. So this is a basic understanding from the technology that we are talking about in this presentation today. But let's then go to the steps. On the next slide, it shows the first project that we had funded by the EU, which was called SEMCAP. And the SEMCAP project on slide number 5, it was a project that has run 2015 around, where we did some elements. We did a literature study, but we also tested some of the components of a typical oxy-fuel application. And one of the tests were done in a Heidelberg materials plant in Hanover, and other parts were managed let me say, in our consortium partners, like for example in the centers in the expert center of the University of Stuttgart, and also together with our IKN partner, let me say, who is a contractor who is developing technology for cement. If you click once more, you see what we tested in real life in Hanover. That was, could we produce the same quality of clinker, which is the outcome of a cement kiln, if you run it in oxy-fuel mode. And this was very, very important lesson learned from this investigation, that the quality of our materials that we produce is still, let me say, of high quality that our customers can accept. So moving to the next slide, slide number 6, it shows the Lilac project. And the Lilac project was also funded by the EU. Obviously, it's another technology. However, also in the Lilac project, we learned how different it is if you are going to do the calcining of limestone in a kiln process without having ambient air available. So if you have calcining in such a reactor, there is a high amount of CO2 in the reactor and no nitrogen, and this gives another dynamics into the reactor. And although this is a completely other technology, you still learn a lot from it. And on the right side, you see the picture of the reactor that we finally built. It's quite an impressive reactor, which has brought the technology much forward. Then on the next slide, we see another EU-funded project, which is called Clinker, and that is a calcium looping process. But if you look carefully on this slide there, it contains one reactor, which is a kind of oxy-fuel reactor, and the second reactor is the carbonator. So, but one of the reactors, the one which is run with oxy-fuel, is very, very similar to an oxycalciner concept. So that what we learned in the Clinker project in Italy, which was funded by the EU again. It was Bucci, UNICEM was the leading partner in this project, and you can see we have commissioned this project. We have taken a lot of learnings, and all these three projects led into the next slide, slide number 8, which shows the projects that have been funded by the EU Innovation Fund. And on the left side of this slide, you can see the project from in France, from Lembre, that was approved in the first call, not from our group, but important development as well, because that is the so-called first generation oxy-fuel setup. And in the right side of this diagram, you see the principal setup of the ANRAV project, where we combined the oxy-fuel calcination, or the oxy-fuel capture with an amine capture. And this is these learnings, we could only come to these learnings based on the previous projects that we did, learning about how does the calcination under oxygen conditions work. And as such, it's a nice, clear proof how we benefited from the synergy between Horizon and EU Innovation Fund. And if we move to the next slide, I'm closing with this slide because it's all about people. And I think here we have an excellent example that one of our colleagues, he used to work at the University of Stuttgart, which played a very important role in the development of the technology. And then he followed the technology and he moved to Heidelberg.
Okay, thank you, Jan. I think we got your final message there, in fact, because your phone has just cut, so we've lost the link to you. But in fact, thank you very much for that expose of a number of projects that have used not just Horizon 2020 and Innovation Fund, but obviously 2 steps of Innovation Fund and the lessons you learned along the way. So I'm going to thank you, and I'm not going to try and resurrect that link now, because I think we already reach 11:30. So what I would like to do, though, is just at the risk of delaying things another 3 or 4 minutes, take 1 or 2 questions from Slido. So if it's possible to go to the Slido page, and just see if we can broaden this question out, and then we will be able to break to the rooms immediately. So I take the first one. Is that the one? The planning in 2004, is that the one you've selected? So planning in 2024 large-scale submission, do you expect changes in the templates or criteria between now and then? If so, then when would they be published? So I don't know whether Roman or you want to take that, or Maria, because I think you did say that there is flexibility, so that they do change now and again, and I guess it's probably not known what's going to be in the 2024, but in 30 seconds, do you think you will be able to answer that? Maria, will you take it?
Yes, thank you, Alan. So there are some changes that we will need to do, as mentioned, due to the EU ETS, but they actually expand the scope of the Innovation Fund rather than changing the approach in terms of award criteria. We are largely going to stay with this award criteria, with these templates. We want continuity. We want to allow actually applicants to resubmit. So that is it. Otherwise, on the planning of the next calls, we will we will have public announcements in around June, July, when exactly, because what I actually didn't mention in my presentation is that we are developing a new scheme based on competitive bidding, and we will have an auction at the end of this year for renewable hydrogen. So around June, July, we will announce actually the planning for the rest of the year and for the next year.
Okay, perfect, thank you. And I saw, I'm going to say, Jose, maybe you could take this one that's at the top. Now then, you've selected the maritime one. So good to see that the maritime sector included in the next EIF calls. That is a good thing. As is it likely to cover also green fuel production for the maritime sector? So, Roman, can you take?
Yes, Alan, I can answer straight away. This is already possible. So if you really have a good look to the call conditions and the sectors, the fuel production is very well covered already now. And please do not wait for the next call.
Okay, great. So in fact, let's take the third one and then we will finish there, because I think the KPIs can be answered probably in bilateral communication. So is so we've lost it, the one that we wanted to get to. So listen, let's take this as the last one, the one that's at the top there now. So so in the Innovation Fund, only open to existing 100. That's an easy one.
No, another one. It changed.
Okay. So how the IF can be combined with InvestEU in terms of CapEx eligibility in each application. I think that would be for Roman. And then we will stop there. So thank you very much, everybody, for your questions. And we will try one way or another to record your questions and answer them bilaterally. Roman, can you take?
Yes, you need to, I'll put this simple. The combination is perfectly fine, even welcome, because we cover, and I put this really simple, we only cover up to 60% of the funding gap that Maria mentioned. In our case, we call it relevant costs. So whatever comes on top of that, that we finance, whether this comes from your sources or any other sources, is more than welcome. And it's perfectly fine if the two funds are combining each other, because if you bring in resources from the InvestEU, it already means that you had a good discussion with colleagues in the EIB, which may have a good element for you to increase your maturity score when we will assess the project. So yes, it's perfectly feasible, and we are even encouraging those combinations.
Okay, thank you. So let's close the Slido interaction at this stage and go to the links, I think, which are for Philip. Will you make a 2-minute intervention, or do you? I think we should probably move on, and then at the end of the session we can give some overview. As a question for everybody, do you know how many people are taking part today? I think there were 400 and something registrations. So I think there was certainly a large interest. But let's move to the meat of the second part of the morning session now, as we reach the end of the morning, and that is to break into the parallel sessions. So you can see the links on the slides. You can QR those, or you can follow the link that you were sent in your original email, or probably if you go onto your to the CINEA website, you can also find the links to the sessions. So there are 3 sessions, as you know. Session 1 is the low carbon technologies, energy intensive industry, and the CCUS. Session 2 is renewable energy generation, and session 3 is the energy storage and hydrogen. So I think at this point we make those 3 rooms live. we will lose you in this room. In fact, this room becomes one of those sessions, and then we will regather at I think it's 12:35, when we will take some feedback from the session moderators. So until 12:35, I say thank you and goodbye from this opening plenary session, and look forward to seeing you later.
Thank you, Alan. We are now entering into session 1. I will give a few minutes to people to accommodate in the chairs in the room, in the virtual room, and people are starting to move out of this room and to go to the different sessions. I take the opportunity while we start to introduce the colleagues of the Commission that will be helping me in this moderation. I have a co-moderator, Antonio Ferrandes from DG RTD, and we have a number of people from the Innovation Fund, which will be also helping us to address a number of questions that may come from the Innovation Fund. I talk about my colleague Evelina, Agata from CINEA, Renata from CINEA, and also Alexandre. We also have in the room, because they have not left yet, Maria and Roma, so we will really have the possibility to address all possible questions in the very highest level anyway. So as long as you tell me, we could start the meeting. Are we ready? Okay. So again, I introduced myself before. My name is José Jiménez. I'm working in DG Clima, and I will be presenting this session. This session is a session that we finally combined. It will be quite a numerous session because we realize about the interconnection between energy-intensive industries and carbon capture, use, and storage. And that's why we have put you all together in this session. Here, while we start, I will possibly ask my colleague Antonio to start with the Slido session, which is supposed to be starting now. And we are presenting a new first slide. Sorry, the Slido question was, is still on? What is the remote? Okay. So here you should ask for your question or vote an existing one. The Slido show is open to you, right? And you will be already answering. My colleague Antonio will be taking notes of the questions that we will try to address later on. Now we move directly then into the presentations and to the session itself. I will give you a very, very short word, of course, of the importance of the energy-intensive industries. As you know, it's a huge sector which brings together almost 5% of the EU GDP, with a huge amount of employees, 6.3 direct employees and 19 million indirect employees. It is a sector in itself which represents a huge part of the total emissions of the EU, around 17.3% of the total EU emissions, which amounts for 49 megatons of CO2. So there is, of course, a huge important sector for us to tackle in the context of the Innovation Fund. Here is worth also to mention, in the context of Horizon Europe and the previous Horizon 2020 program, the process for planet partnerships, which is a partnership in Horizon Europe, which would have, of course, also present in Horizon 20, in which brings together all the energy-intensive industries, and they have been very helpful in the preparation of this workshop, and in particular to identify the potential projects that could benefit from this possibility to migrate from research into the deployment scale. Having said that, I think this is just setting as the general frame. Of course, the whole energy efficient industries has a lot of different ramifications, and of course the common denominator for all of them in the case of the Innovation Fund would be, of course, the avoidance of greenhouse gas emissions. Of course, we will have projects dealing with electrification, energy intensive, digitalization, industrial symbiosis, circularity, and of course, more important as well, energy and resource efficiency, which has a direct effect on greenhouse gas emissions. Now, we move directly into the session itself. As you can see, we will start by presenting experiences of a number of projects which some either have, in the particular case of CarbFix, we already saw a general presentation in the beginning, but we asked them to join this session because we wanted really to explain in details, not so much the project itself, but the specific lessons learned, they learned through the journey. Obviously, they went through the process spontaneously, which shows again, of course, what we're doing here is quite an obvious thing. Obviously, people will need to move from research to deployment. That's what it's proposed to be. We don't want research to stay in the bibliotheques or the libraries. We want research to be implemented in the ground. So CarbFix is a good example in which this happened. We will then present 3 other projects, which are indeed projects which have not yet made the journey, projects that have the potential, as far as they see, of having developed good technologies under Horizon 2020, and they will go directly, hopefully, through the journey in the possibility of deployment their technologies through Innovation Fund. So, having said that, I would possibly give the floor, if you are so kind, to the first speaker, which is going to tell us about geothermal emissions control from the CarbFix project, which was indeed the original Horizon 2020 project. Bergur, the floor is yours. You're connected. Thank you.
Thank you very much, and good morning, everyone. Yes, I will concentrate on the GECKO project, but not CarbFix 2, because that's essentially has been implemented, and it was essentially implemented into GECKO 2, into GECKO, sorry. GECKO, next slide, please.
Next slide, please.
The aim of GECKO is to primarily to lower emissions by capturing them for either storage or reuse from geothermal power plants. And we want to essentially lower the CapEx, lower the OpEx, and we want to come up with new solutions that are integrated into the power plants. And by doing this with geothermal, we first of all go to a sector that we know, but we are also developing capture technologies and monitoring technologies that can be applied in other, industries. Next slide, please. It's a fairly large project. We have 4 industrial partners and a few research facilities, all scattered around Europe. And you can see here, it's quite nice spread all the way from Iceland to Turkey, where we have power plants on either sides of the spectrum. Next slide, please. Here you see the timeline of the project. We started in 2018, and we actually extended the project by half a year due to COVID. And this was mainly, the project was designed in such a way that we started with all the basic design and site characterization of 4 demonstration sites on the original plan. Actually, they were changed during the project, but I will go better into that later. Then we did final engineering of all systems after the basic engineering, and then we started to demonstrate one by one the technologies in the summer of 2021, but they were delayed certainly by COVID, and some of them were delayed all the way into year 2022. Next slide, please. If we go into the technologies that were tested and aligned and demonstrated all across the demo sites, we first go to the first demo site in Iceland, which was at the Hellisheiði and Nesjavellir power plants. And there we did reservoir modeling. And this was one very important thing, to get all the reservoir modelers of all the groups to come up with, let's say, similar framework and routines to generate quite high quality reservoir models to predict the fate of the CO2 and H2S, because of this is our geothermal power plants in the subsurface. We also there developed a capture plant, a pilot capture plant, which is this demonstration plant you see there on the top right. We were going to install and demonstrate purification technologies at these power plants, but then essentially during the course of the project, we found out that they were not suitable for these power plants because of the complexity of the gas mixtures, but we followed, we kept on with developing them on the design stage. So we have essentially purification technologies that could potentially be applied at other plants. We have started CO2 injection at Nesjavellir and are doing that essentially in an integrated capture and injection plant with very high capture efficiency. We have also demonstrated and developed monitoring technologies. And one thing that we have learned is that during this process is that it's easier said than done to apply new technologies into especially old power plants, because there can be quite a lot of things that you don't foresee when you, especially for example in the case of Nesjavellir, where you have a power plant that was commissioned in 1990, a lot has changed and a lot has gone, it's not everything like it was designed before. So make sure you keep enough time and resources to know and to just be successful in integrated into existing infrastructure. Next slide, please. We also had a site in Castelnuovo in Italy, and this was one thing that we did not manage to fulfill our aim. And here, essentially, licensing issues where we stopped us from carrying on and demonstrating a fully zero-emission power plant there. And this is something that we have definitely learned here. So with these short Horizon 2020 projects or Horizon Euro projects, make sure you have the licenses, all of that in place, so you can indeed demonstrate your technologies. And this licensing in CCS cannot be underestimated. We all know that in this business, but this was a clear case that we did not manage to demonstrate what we want to do. As a mitigation, we decided to demonstrate a testing unit that was supposed to capture all emissions from a discharging power plant or discharging well. We decided to go to a new site, and then we go to the next slide, please. In Iceland, we have quite a lot of wells, both old and abandoned production. One back, please. We old and abandoned wells, so we managed to negotiate with the Energy Authority of Iceland to lend us an abandoned production well. So there we could get geothermal fluid and steam, and we actually took the testing unit that was supposed to be demonstrated in Italy, and we are moving that to Iceland and do all the testing in Iceland, and then we'll just take the results from that and extrapolate it to other geothermal sites. So that was actually good for the project. There was some flexibility, and we could negotiate with the Commission to amend the project a little bit and still fulfill or achieve our aims. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. Our partners at Sorlu that operate the Kızılderili power plant in Turkey, they go one, please, one back, please. Yes, so while we are going back one slide, Sorlu, they also hooked up a capture unit and a compressor to one of their newest turbine, Kızılderili 3 at their plant, and there they could take, and there you can see at the bottom, this is the infrastructure that was needed to capture and compress the CO2 from them, and they compress this into a condensate stream and are able and have been operating actually and injecting quite a lot of CO2 into the ground there since last year, and that has been going quite successfully. And the monitoring is ongoing of that, and that is being evaluated how that can be expanded in that particular power plant and in other power plants of similar nature in Turkey. Next, please. Finally, we have when the slide arrives at Fraunhofer in Bochum. They have a geothermal center there where they can do all kinds of interesting things, and they also have wells, experimental wells in the site, and there they did follow the same route as everybody else, even though it's not a geothermal. They did the reservoir modeling of the site. They have permission to inject a small amount of CO2 into the ground and follow their fate. But more importantly, perhaps at Fraunhofer, they also, in this project, they built a reactor where they can simulate the reservoir conditions and do quite, let's say, mesoscale simulations of reactions happening in the subsurface. So that can be transported or implemented at other geothermal sites. One more slide, I think I have. Next slide. So what we are doing now, we are in this last 6 months of the project. We are wrapping up the project and we are evaluating all the demonstration campaigns and see how we can indeed apply this at other geothermal sites, both in Europe and worldwide. We are evaluating essentially how the collaborations have occurred between the industrial partners and the tech developers, what has been the successes and the failures. We are looking at the exploitation routes and see how we can go further with these technologies. And now we are mainly concentrating also on, of course, dissemination activities, are aiming for a workshop very soon. And let's hope we will get quite a lot of people there. And we are also doing a market roadmap and also just, looking at all the opportunities, how we can develop both the technologies further and more importantly, implement them. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, very good, very excellent presentation, and again, it's clearly showing some potential for future development, which I'm sure we will see about you in the next stage. Particularly, I see you're looking into the future exploitation, property rights, and stuff like that. Of course, you should look, of course, into industrial exploitation later on, but of course, that's what you're here. So again, with this, we will move directly to the next presenter. Let me introduce you, Tijmen, I hope I pronounced correctly, from the Biotics company, and it was part of the iCare Plus project on circular chemicals project. So, Tijmen, the floor is yours. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, you pronounced it correctly, so that is that's so good. Yes. So my name is Tijmen Vries, working at BioBTX, and we have developed a chemical recycling technology to produce chemicals from mixed plastic waste and biomass. And we were part, as mentioned, on the iCare Plus project, which is almost finished. So yeah, I would like to present what our next steps are and how we would or could make use of the Innovation Fund. So next slide, please. So yeah, as mentioned, we were part of the Horizon 2020 iCare Plus project, which was a project with all different types of technology development developers, but catalyst developers, waste management companies, and end users of these kind of chemicals that we are producing. And with the development of our chemical recycling technology, we are able to substitute directly for fossil resources. So to substitute the fossil resources for mixed plastic waste and biomass. And within the iCare Plus project, we did a lot of research with the partners into the catalyst development, into optimization, into development, into the pilot plant scale production of the what we call the circular BTX, which are the chemicals being produced out of our technology. And we were involved in we did pilot plant experiments and production of these chemicals. Next slide, please. And what is then required for the next stage of the implementation of our technology at a full scale? So currently we are, our goal is to demonstrate our technology at a commercial scale. And the challenge here for in this circular economy is to connect the waste management part, so the mixed plastic waste, to the chemical industry. And as you can see, we have here we will be realizing this in our demonstration plant, which we call the Petra Circular Chemicals Plant. And there we will process 20 kilotons of mixed plastic waste into the benzene, toluene, and xylene. And the challenge there is that we go to commercial scale, of course, and well, there we need the funds, but additionally also, of course, mitigating the risk. And mitigating the risk are combinations of securing the feedstock, so the mixed plastic waste, and 20 kilotons in the waste industry is a lot of waste. But if you transfer that to to the output to the chemical industry, they say, well, 20 kilotons is only a small part. So to a small part of what they're currently doing. So to make the combination between the waste management industry and the chemical industry, that is the main challenge here. And of course, what is needed to address those, to mitigate those risks, that is of course a lot of money in this case, because BioBTX, as we are only a small startup company, but we are operating in a very big, in the chemical industry. So that is the main challenge here. So securing the funds needed as a startup for a very capex intensive industry, that is the main challenge here. So next slide, please. And why would the Innovation Fund be a very suitable tool here? Well, as mentioned, the chemical industry is, of course, at the center of the European Green Deal. It's not only about CO2 and greenhouse gas emission savings, but it's also of strategic importance, because by, again, using these renewable input streams, so mixed plastic waste and biomass, we're also securing our critical raw materials, which are essential for our strategic value chains. And of course, by using, again, these residual waste streams, we can be less dependent of fossil producing countries, and simultaneously saving enormous amounts of fossil resources to be extracted from the earth. So that is the main reason why we see that our technology, and then especially this first demonstration plant, is high important for the EU. But then the challenge there is to, as a startup, as BioBTX is, to secure the funds on a very capex intensive project. So that is where the Innovation Fund can come in. Next slide, please. So how are we going, what do we envision that will be the main challenges? Well, of course, as just mentioned, but how we are trying to address these challenges now is to realize a consortium of interested parties, and that are strategic partners active in the waste management industry, but also in the construction industry of these kind of chemical plants, and parties who are active in the chemical industry, to all create this consortium of investors and partners to realize our first commercial scale plant. We see it as a very commercial scale plant. It will be have a positive business case, but the strategic partners, they see it more as a demonstration plant, of course, to show, okay, is this technology viable? Can we produce at large scale these drop-in chemicals from the mixed plastic waste? By creating a consortium of all different types of parties, we think that we can realize this first commercial scale plant. And this will be the world's first non-fossil based aromatics plant. So that is the goal from BioBTX side, to show that this technology is working on commercial scale, and from there on we can deploy the technology to multiple places in the world and in the EU to valorize low value waste streams into high value chemicals. Next slide, please. Thank you.
Thank you indeed, Tijmen, for your very sharp presentation and for having focused on the key items that we really want you to address, on what you achieve and what you really are, your perspective for new developments. It's a good example of a small, relatively small company with big dreams to create this new first world plan on non-fossil aromatic plants anyway. And we're happy, of course, to see that you're really looking into the things that you need, of course, possibly building a real consortium with high industrial engagement and financial possibilities. And hopefully at the end, you will find the hook with the Innovation Fund. So thank you for that. And with that, we move directly to the next speaker, which is Jan Vente from TNO. Here we will see an example of a research project on carbon capture use. And it's curious to see how you are indeed from a research organization, of course, a big one like TNO. And it would be good also for you to explain to us how do you expect to mutate from this research environment to a real heavy investment industrial environment like the Innovation Fund. But we are looking forward to hear you. Thanks.
Good afternoon, or it's just afternoon. Thank you for the opportunity to present our progress that we are making and our further steps that we're doing to decarbonize the steel industry. We're talking here mainly about 2 projects, but there's a whole series of other projects around it. So let's kick off. Next slide, please. So if you look at the steel plants, you know, you've got the coke oven, you've got the blast furnace, the basic oxygen, and in the future, a DRI. And of that coming a lot of residual gases. Those are energy containing and also contain significant amounts of CO2 and carbon monoxide. So what we can do then is put them through our capture and syngas tuning system to prepare a syngas that is ready for methanol and ammonia production, for instance. And the excess CO2 that will be there is then ready for storage. So we combine CO2 utilization with the valorization of the CO2 and storage. So we've been working on completed projects like Stepwise, Fresme and Elegancies in various European settings. Before that, there were even other projects. We are now still running the C4U Initiate project, and in the planning is an Elevate project. And the key in these things is that we start at the very front. We have high TRL steelmaking, and at the back we have high TRL methanol and ammonia production. And in between there is the gap, and that's where we are focusing on. And if you go to the next slide. Now, please. Then it is highlighted. And so that's our core technology that we are looking in. The exact functioning and the exact working of it, I would leave to another opportunity for a more technology-driven audience. So where are we now on the next slide? And I'm sorry, but I saw already some edits that I should have made. So what we've done in the Fresme project, we converted blast furnace gas into methanol. We did about 25 tons of methanol, and we produced it at a TRL that we would find at 6. And we used that in the Stena Germanica to sail across the Baltic Sea. And that is already an ammonia or a methanol-powered vessel, and that worked also fine with ours. So, but also on the technology, we've proven the integrity of the functional materials. There's a sorbent in it that is unique for this application. And we also showed that it was stable performance for over 10,000 cycles. So that is, you know, with that on the blast furnace, we're ready for the next step. At the same time now, ongoing, we have a scale up of the technology where we're going to make 3 tons of ammonia per day, and we are building the installation at the moment. So we're going from a single column to a multi-column capture equipment. And there you could find a positive business case at the right scale, even without regulations. And that is because we are using here the basic oxygen furnace gas, and that's a gas that is rather intense in energy. That's pretty good and pretty high level. So if we treat that with our technology, we get a hydrogen to nitrogen mixture, which is perfect for ammonia. And of course, you reduce a lot of other equipment. So how do we look the future on the next slide? So we are now currently looking at the TRL levels of 6 to 7, where we have been working on the Stepwise and C4U project, where in the more added value route, we're looking at methanol and ammonia. those are things that are funded and are done. The next step would be to go to de-risk the capture for CO2 storage. And that would be what we call the Elevate, and that's a 50 kiloton CO2 capture unit. And there we run into an issue that it's too large for a standard subsidized project and too small for an investment, because here we don't have a business case yet. For that, you would need to also add the demonstration for the methanol or ammonia case, and that would be something like a 30 kilotons level. But the total investment would be enormous for this scale. So, but after those steps have been taken, then you can reach commercial scale, and then for a steel plant, you're looking at multiple megatons per year of CO2 capture, and the commercial added value, commercial production level of around 400 kilotons per year, something like that. So those are the steps that we foresee in it. And on the next slides, where you come to, like what are the opportunities that we see and what are the challenges. And on the top, you see our Swedish location in the North Sweden, where we are doing our work. We're using gas from the SSAB steel plant there and do the testing at Sverim. And here I'm standing actually on ice. So hopefully we can continue doing that. So we have the opportunities as a broad committed consortium present and with a willingness to invest. So, there is multi-million interest to continue. A TRL 8 demonstration site is available, so we have an interested host. And we are ready for a technology for 50 to 100 kiloton CO2 capture. Also, the full value chain is aligned, so every essential party is present in our collaboration. And further cost reduction in the supply chain is feasible, especially, for instance, in the sorbent and through the scaling up of commercial level. And that's the step that has to come after the TRL 8, because at that level, it's still too small to be really cost reduction available. So the challenges is that we still need a significant scale up. As I said, we are now running at around 10 kilotons per year. We are happy to go to 50 or 100, but we have to go to megatons. So there's our large scale-ups to be taken still. The TRL 8 step is not cost-effective yet, and also so for public support is needed there. But what I hear, like the Innovation Fund, that a business case has to be provided, that will be very hard here, if not impossible. And also the issue that we're facing is that subsidies are not clear to a TRL 8 demonstrator. I really heard one of the European administrators saying something like the member states do not want us to support those. And what is also a big challenge is the availability of renewable electricity and hydrogen when we're talking about the production of value-added compounds. And additional hydrogen is a plus there. But also CO2 storage opportunities at sufficient scale, at close enough distance to testing sites is what we need to push this technology further. So with that, I come to my last slide, where I thank the European Union for their contributions in the Fresme Initiate project and all the other projects that we worked on. And that's mostly, by the way, in the Spire-based projects. And of course, if you have any questions, please come to reach out to me, and I'm very happy to talk to you about any progress that we further can do. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Jaap, indeed, for the excellent presentations and for the challenging questions that you put at the end, of course. I really hope you make it. We said it's maybe not impossible, it's hard, but I'm sure it's a lot of work to do to get to the real business case, which is really running. But hopefully we find the right way to do it anyway. So on that, we move to the last speaker of this round of presentations, which is going to be Enrico Forlini from the Supreme project and from the MRI company on the optimizing power metallurgic processes. Enrico.
Hello. Hello to everyone.
Buongiorno.
Yeah, buongiorno. Okay, today, please, next slide. I'm coming from MBN Nanomaterialia, which is quite a small company producing powder materials, and our willingness is to exploit the results achieved in Supreme project. Supreme project deals with the development of sustainable and flexible powder metallurgy processes to be optimized with, let's say, an holistic reduction of raw material resources and energy consumption. This project was funded under the Aspire call in 2017 and aimed to provide an integrated approach for the optimization of process towards a sustainable, resource efficient and low carbon technologies. The core of this project concept was dealing with the manufacturing of advanced ferrous and non-ferrous materials, mostly targeting or in the field of powder metallurgy, so powder manufacturing, trying to provide some more integrated and flexible and sustainable processes in this field, thus reducing the consumption of raw materials, reducing the use of critical raw materials, and at the same time improve energy efficiencies, production rate, and reduce CO2 emissions. In this project framework, MBN, as powder producer, worked on the improvement of high energy efficiency for its mechanical alloying process. Mechanical alloying is a solid state process we use to produce metal powders, and in that case we achieved a quite impressive reduction of CO2 equivalent emissions for the production, the manufacturing of a steel-based powder. Next slide, please. Now our aim is to deploy such achievement, so such, let's say, cost-effective and energy-effective, next slide, please, energy-effective process in the field of oxide dispersion strengthened steels to be applied in the energy sector. Sorry, but okay, perfect. Therefore, we have a method, we have a process to produce such an engineered powder with very fine and homogeneous dispersion of nano reinforcement. Sorry, one back, please. We see for such a production an important for us market perspective, but to do this we need a focused value chain. We cover just a part of the value chain, the powder manufacturing, but we need to involve raw material suppliers and up to engineers for downstream manufacturing and final applications, such as components for gas turbines, high temperature furnaces, and even nuclear applications. So we need to combine all these knowledge together in a value chain for exploiting such achievement in the project. Next one, please. The funding opportunity is in this sense the possibility to support such collaborative actions between small enterprises, small and medium enterprises, and even larger industries to bring on such innovation in real application. But to do this, we need to combine a very high metallurgical know-how, so maybe from research centers, availability of suppliers for customized raw materials, the access to pilot and industrial scale facilities for metallurgy, displaying also certain flexibility in managing the process for new products. And at the end, a lot of intensive efforts for the qualification of new products, targeting the application of such new materials. So next slide, please. At the end, we expect as main challenge the need for a real demonstration of technical and economical effectiveness of our solution in a real application environment, because we are targeting the substitution of very well-established materials from conventional routes. So we need to prove our effectiveness and efficiency with data from field tests. And to achieve such TRL 7, we need the involvement of the whole value chain. We, in the future perspective, can offer our past expertise on this, because we had the same approach being successful for other applications in joint developments, for example, in a tools sector or in hard-facing coatings, coming actually at the end with new products. So concluding with the next slide, I'd like to thank you for this opportunity to show the results and the perspectives from our point of view, to be involved in let's say, collaborative systems towards the application of innovations. As the former speakers, thank you for listening, and if you have any questions, feel free to contact us.
Thank you very much, Enrico, for the presentation. Indeed, another very good example of a technology which still may need some further developments until reach the final market stage. But anyway, that's what we're here for, to identify the ones which are ready to go through and the ones which still need to go and continue working on it. There's a mixture of opportunities. But now I really take the opportunity to start possibly the most interesting part of the session, which will be a round of questions, which you will be asking questions to the Slido show, and we will of course do our best with the team which I already introduced before to answer some of them. Many of them will be also answering written in case we don't have the time to answer physically here. So if we start by the first question already, what is the level of investment need for your project to be deployed? This is possibly more a question addressed to the participants than to the audience. But anyway, I let here maybe our colleagues from the Innovation Fund to tell us what is the level of investment that you think is needed in a deployment project. This is basically the amount of the budget that you think is more or less, to give an indication, if I understand correctly. Maybe Maria can give an answer.
Well, thank you, Jose. Well, generally, in fact, this indeed has to come from the project. It has to be the right level of investment, the right level of CapEx that will make this project happen.
Thank you, Maria. That was a clear question. The second one, which is the link between the CSA and the workshop, I really take the opportunity to explain myself because it is quite an important one for you to understand. The workshop, as we explained, is just the first time we get together. We start discussing all this. We have analyzed the potential of different projects, different activities. It is still a facilitating workshop to make sure that everybody gets together and understand the issues. The CSA, indeed, as you were talking here, the CSA stands for Coordinated Support Action, is something that we put in the work program as a facilitator tools to continue this process and not to finish with the workshop. Basically, there will be 4 CSAs independent in each of the different technological areas in which the participants are expected to put together competitive proposals that will be evaluated. Again, what is the link here? The link is, of course, on the thematic. It will offer a continuation of the process in the longer term. We will expect, of course, that the winning CSAs will continue this job in specific fields. So basically, a similar workshop like this one will be happening in the next years to come. We will not need the support of CINEA at that time. We will, of course, count on the consortium to run it themselves. But in particular, a very important link that I want to highlight is you. The link is you. I mean, basically, when I say you, the project of Horizon 2020 are the key players in the new CSA. The projects which are indeed requested to be part of the consortium need to be there. We don't know which ones, maybe some of them, that we are very happy to hear the presentations. Of course, many of them would even qualify for that. But of course, we are not here to decide who's going to be in that consortium. This is up to you, and the evaluation will decide which is the best consortium. I take the opportunity also to highlight that in that particular CSA consortium is not only restricted to projects, but we also expect other facilitating bodies. We mentioned in this particular session SPIRE and the Process for Planet partnership, which is, of course, bringing together the whole industry in this sector. So again, we expect a very imaginative and very efficient proposal from your side that will meet all the criteria. But this is basically as far as I can go for the CSA and the workshop. Next question maybe, is the technology developed under Horizon 2020 advanced enough to go for Innovation Fund? Well,
maybe I can jump in and help answer
yes,
the question.
Please.
So as some kind of a general rule, if we are only talking about the technology, maybe we can apply this rule that innovation actions under Horizon are applicable for the Innovation Fund, because the technology should be at the TRL 7 or 8 by the end of the Horizon project. When we are talking about the research and the innovation actions, I think they would still need some further development. The only exception is, for example, the topic we have in the current large-scale call, where we have a pilot topic. So for this topic, the TRL below 7 could also apply. But this is some kind of a general rule. Of course, it depends on case-by-case basis.
Okay, I see the next question, which indeed is gone already. Let's start with the next one, which is changing a moving target. Will you organize another senior workshop to follow up on the outcomes of the campaign and to share experience from selected CSAs? The answer is yes. The question is, will you, who is you? In this particular case, we expect indeed the CSAs, which will be funded to do this, to get together. And this is a requirement of the call, that the 4 CSAs will work together and they will decide on a bottom-up way if they will organize a similar workshop to this or independent workshop in the different sectors and in a joint session. Yes, of course, the answer is very likely yes, but still we need to see who is going to do that. So, maybe the last question here, will the SME be able to use the CO2 reduction potential methodology necessary for the application? I don't know, this is something you can possibly address, Roman, on this SME's case?
Yes, of course, the methodology is company type agnostic.
Very quick and efficient answer. There is a question here which is possibly addressed to the project participants here. Which programs or funding do you plan to apply for besides the Innovation Fund? This is, of course, not for the Commission to answer, but for the participants. So maybe some of the colleagues that were presenting before, Taimen, Jab, Enrico, Bengur, can you take the floor and answer this question? No.
Well,
yes,
for sure.
Not all of the other one. Yes.
Well, for sure, there are some Horizon Europe calls that could help to cover some gaps between, I don't know, TR6 or TR7, or to consolidate TRL7. These are the some opportunities.
Okay, that is a good answer indeed. I mean, this is of course connected to some of the presentations which we saw there is still room for continuous development until we get the real business case running and able to be operating. And of course, in that case, you will still be needed Horizon Europe funding or other national funding or whatever. Fine. Then for SMEs, which is of course a clear answer, I lead my colleagues from the Innovation Fund, whoever wants to take the floor and answer what the possibility for SME to get an Innovation Fund grant. Roman, take it, go.
It's actually quite large, and especially because we have a dedicated call for small-scale projects. We are now opening under the large-scale call the pilot topic, which I presume will also include maybe smaller companies behind these projects, because we expect them to be at a lower technology readiness level. So that is something where I think clearly is space, but I would say quite large. It depends on how mature the project is rather than who the applicant is. So please do apply.
Thanks, Roman. On the second question, the answer is simple. Yes, the slides and the sessions will be recorded in the CINEA website, so you will have all the information. I also happy to read more than a question, a comment from Spire, in which they welcome the CSA call and the Innovation Fund, and the Synergies across the CSA is desirable, of course, in the areas 1 or 2. This is a self-answer. Of course, we already highlighted the need to connect energy-efficient industries, carbon capture storage. Of course, very much welcome synergy between areas 1 and 2. And not only, I think at the end of the day, we also need to find also connection with the other parts of the program. So the next question on Innovation Fund, you can read it. If Innovation Fund wants projects that are sufficiently mature to be ready for demonstration, so how can we ensure that Horizon 20 project will be sufficiently mature? That's a tricky question. I guess the answer comes directly with the Horizon 2020 program itself. I mean, clearly, when you read the topics, we clearly request there, of course, that the technology should be aiming at high level of demonstration, especially in the case of the innovation actions. So, of course, we can only ask the participants to make sure they do their best, but of course we cannot certainly ensure that until we get the proposal themselves. And of course, once we are evaluated, provided that the evaluation is, of course, targeting projects which have been selected for innovation, for the innovation action proposals, we should have sufficient guarantees that this will happen. Of course, there is a risk in all innovation and research programs, and it's not obvious that everything that is started finishes successfully. But of course, this is the best we can hope.
If you like, I can add maybe one small comment to that.
Yes, please.
If you can hear me, I think just also keep inside the commercial aspect, because for innovation funds, we look at projects which can demonstrate that they can reach a commercial scale and be economically viable. We also, and I think that's an important point, we also have a window in our call where we pilot projects can apply, and so they can be at a pre-commercial scale, and we expect that they can validate some assumptions on technical and economic feasibility. So I think that I would like to react to that, because there was one participant mentioned, that project that was more in a pilot stage. So there, please look at the Innovation Fund, because there is this topic and this possibility to apply. What is important, so there you can test your assumptions, but what is important is that so Innovation Fund will help you to give you one side of the financing, but it is important that you also show that the shareholders of the project can also provide the other part of the financing. So I think it was the third participant. Pilot projects are welcome, and they can be funded Innovation Funds. I think one of the other aspects that was mentioned was about the difficulty to bridge the gap between different sides of the industry, so waste management and chemical, and the idea was there to introduce a consortium. So this is something that we see in many projects, so that can be a way to help you to further develop. So it's to kind of partner with different players in the industry. And finally, I think another question was on the business plan. I think what we really ask you is to engage early with the different participants in your market to secure permits, to secure contracts, and to secure financing. So just a long answer, but just to complement a bit on the and to react on the previous presentations. Thank you.
Thank you, Alexander, for the compliment. It's very good. So now we have indeed a question which is a bit tricky, which I will need to pass. We'd like to have here our colleagues from the Innovation Fund. You start talking about InvestEU equity funding and how the Innovation Fund should be connected to this. So certainly this is a technical question for either Maria, Roman, or Evelina. Evelina, maybe you didn't take the floor yet, so maybe Evelina, you are on the spot.
Happy to do that, and good afternoon, everyone. Yes, it's a very good question. And first of all, I need to say that we are very much looking for such synergies from the side of the Innovation Fund. So if, for example, you take InvestEU and you look at the eligibility criteria, so to say, of the InvestEU, you will find that there is actually perfect match between Innovation Fund eligible activities and what is under InvestEU. Of course, InvestEU is much bigger because it also corresponds to other policy priorities. But yes, both programs in this field of decarbonization, they look for the same projects. It is possible to combine them. There was a question on the earlier session exactly on this. And in order to facilitate it, we have put on our website the paper explaining the accumulation. It is possible, of course, some ground rules have to be observed, no double funding, for example. So we actively look for this. The same goes for Horizon. We look for this is why we have this workshop today. We look for the synergies, and we would like in certain topics to create already a push for thinking of the next steps of the funding. So there is definitely effort on our side. We do realize that innovation fund support will not be sufficient. And I would just take an opportunity now to say that yesterday we published a market testing survey. You have information on the DG Klima website and on the CINEA website. Well, maybe you heard it in the morning sessions. But we are very much looking for the feedback, exactly what else is needed to make Innovation Fund even more attractive and more suitable to projects, be it from SMEs, mid-size companies, different sizes of projects trying to combine different kinds of funding. So do have a look because it's a great opportunity to provide us a feedback which will be used for the next calls and the future operation of the Innovation Fund. Thank you.
Thank you, Elina, and thank you for this little propaganda at the last. So here, I think this is the real last question that I'm going to combine, and I will really offer the possibility to the speakers that will present them, because it's more for them to answer, to provide one or two answers in the terms of what are the challenges that you experience from going to development, and what is the gap that they experience between project results and deployment. So maybe I will allow just one intervention from the last speakers, but we were about to close. So the floor is. Yes.
If I can make one comment, the main challenges now is to overcome the regulatory barriers of, implementing climate mitigating technologies as opposed to implementing our climate damaging technologies. We find it quite crazy that it's not the natural systems we are having the biggest problems with, it's the man-made systems, and that's my input on that.
Thank you very much. It was a very nice closing answer to the last questions, and I cannot close this without thanking Antonio for the heavy work behind the scenes, preparing all the questions. Antonio, thank you very much for this, and I allow you to close the session even yourself.
Thank you very much, Jose, and thank you very much to all the participants. I think it's a very good debate, and now we continue to the main session after a quick break.
Thank you, everybody, again, for a really rich questions, and don't hesitate to come back to us for any other question you might have later on. Thanks.
Bye-bye.
So just to keep people involved in where we are now, that the sessions are drawing to a close, and so some of the sessions have finished, and one or two will join us in a few moments, and then we will pick things up literally in a minute or two. So we just have a short break while people disconnect and reconnect to the plenary room. Thank you. So welcome back to the session, everybody. Welcome back to the plenary room. I think all of the breakout sessions have now finished, and in a few moments I will ask each of the moderators to give some summary comments of what went on at the session. A couple of pieces of housekeeping before we get to that point. First of all, if you look on Slido, there is a feedback form, which is what you thought about today's session. And that would be a very useful thing for us in terms of feedback, whether you thought that these breakout sessions worked, whether the main plenary was good, whether if there is another workshop, it's better to do it as face-to-face to enjoy networking at the same time, and also possibly in the context of the CSA, there might be a follow-up then with a similar synergies between Horizon 2020 or by then Horizon Europe and the Innovation Fund as an outcome of that CSA. So your feedback would be very useful. So please look up that form to fill in on Slido, and it's very useful to us. Now the other element was that we jumped. The session has been recorded, and all the slides have been collected together, and so they will be available on a link on the CINEA website in a few days' time. So you don't need to go photographing screens or asking for bilateral exchange of emails of slides. They will be on the CINEA website, as will the recorded session. So we okay, very good. So we have hopefully provided you with a good overview of the Innovation Fund and how it works, explaining the programme, explaining the lessons learned, and I think that going back after the event and looking particularly at the presentation of Roman and the lessons learned for the programme, it's really worth spending a few moments looking at that. But before handing to the three moderators, I wondered if we could just hand back to Philippe, whose presentation we skipped just before going into the session, so we could keep to our timing. So Philippe was going to give us an overview of who's taking part today and the logic of who is in the breakout session. So Philippe, are you in a position to take the floor?
Yes, Alan, thank you. Maybe we can also go to the slides. Those were the ones before the breakout session, just so we can also have a look at the statistics before as well. Yes. Exactly. So first of all, by means of introduction, my name is Philip Hawkins. I'm a policy officer in DG Klima C2, where we focus on research and deployment of low-carbon technologies. And yes, so as you know, today's workshop is primarily aimed and targeted at mature Horizon 2020 projects. So we thought it would be just a good idea as well to give a bit of an overview, a bit of a breakdown on who our audience is, and sort of in terms of the type of entities, the technological areas they represent, who we have in our virtual room today. So next slide, please. Yes, today we received over 350 registrations for the event, and in the registration forms we gathered some core data and some core information on the attendees. Then perhaps we start with the technological areas of the R&I projects. So for all of the attendees today that have also participated in the Horizon 2020 program, we see that the most representatives of the projects that were engaged in the renewable energy generation area, that's 35% of the participants, followed by low carbon technology for the decarbonization of energy intensive industries with 32%, followed by CCUS, so carbon capture, utilization and storage projects with 18%, and lastly energy storage and hydrogen with 15%. Then if we look at the type of entity and organization that our attendees today represent, by far the large majority of participants today come from entities that are private for profit, so that's 42%, followed by research organization, 18%, then non-government or non-profit organizations with 13%, and then lastly higher or secondary education establishments with 5%. So I think here the bottom line is that we have a good mix. We have, in terms of technological areas, quite a range, and also in terms of the type of entities. And I think I will keep it at that. Thank you, Alan, and yes.
Thank you very much, Philippe. I think it's very useful for us to know know the origins of the people who are tuning in today, and 350 participants who registered. And as I understood it, normally one registrant per project, if you like, or per potential project. That covers an awful lot of projects in a way, which are the potential feedstock. But of course, it's not just Horizon 2020; it's many other funding programs. So we hope that this is the beginning, as José said earlier in the session. Certainly not the end of anything, it's the beginning. But let me stop talking now, say thank you once again to Philippe, and hand over to our session moderators. And first I'd like to hand over to session 1, which was low carbon tech in energy intensive industries and carbon capture, utilization and storage. So José, if you would like to take the floor and give us some feedback from your session. Thank you.
Thank you, Alan, indeed. I mean, well, the session was extremely rich, as we expected. I mean, the fact that we merged the low-carbon technologies and efficient industries with carbon capture, storage, and use, proven right. Of course, there was a lot of connection between the presentations made by the different presenters. We have 4 very interesting presentations with a high potential to move to the next deployment phase in the areas of geothermal emission control, in the areas of circular chemical industry, with the very nice goal of to build the world's first plant on no-fossil aromatic plants, which is very ambitious goals. We also have a project on residual steel gas to methanol, in this case presented by a strong research organization of the Netherlands, TNO, but of course very heavily supported with heavy industrial-based projects anyway. And finally, we have a nice also project on the optimization of the powder metallurgical process from a colleague from Italy. Basically, the 4 projects show this high potential. In some cases, of course, also the huge complexity of what we're talking about here is obvious in the slides that we presented many times, that there is a logic continuation from research to deployment. Well, the arrow is not as simple as it looks, of course. It's a massive change. It's a totally different philosophy. This was so clearly that, of course, in the case of a big industrial project, there are a number of problems to be solved. Some of them were highlighted by the presenters here in terms of the complexity. Some of them, indeed, highlighted the need to have a fully developed business model that will be applied in reality and at large scales, which is sometimes not always the case. Sometimes, of course, highlighted the need for public support to get there anyway. So we are always there in the middle of this process in which we need to know when we're ready and what is still needed to go. Another highlight was, of course, the issue of regulatory barriers, which obviously we know, especially in cases like carbon capture storage and others. It's not so evident that it's not only about the technology, it's also about to have the permissions and the possibilities to make this operational and to have the right locations. So all this was very fascinating. We know already, and certainly we expect that these projects and many others that were listening, of course, again, we want to make it clear, we invited these 4 projects just because we thought they were good, but there is no priority selection a priori on any project. Every project who has been applied to Horizon 2020 will compete on equal grounds on the Innovation Fund application. That has to be made it clear, of course. This indeed brings us to some of the questions which were linked to many of them to the CSA, which we understood that was going to be quite a complex issue to understand. That's why Alan asked me to address this in this session, which also to share with the other sessions as well. What are the links between the CSA and the workshop itself? We explained that, of course, the workshop, as we know, was the first exercise that we bring all these people together. It's the launching of the exercise. The CSAs will be very interesting supporting activities that we run over the next 3-4 years. We will be accompanying you during the process and basically facilitating the job. Facilitating the job for you to get there, to help projects which have developed activities to get to the next stage and to get to the successful application funds. So again, this is one of the links. The other links that we explain is, of course, that indeed the beneficiary of these CSAs will be some of you. Well, some of you and some of who may not be you, even present here, because it will be a competitive tender, and we are inviting a number of projects of Horizon 2020 to get together to share their experiences, together with other facilitating bodies, in the way that this process could be continued, not only, and this is a double important element of the CSA, not only in terms of the individual projects that will be projecting themselves to the future into deployment, but also very important, the CSA as such is a facilitating body, which will indeed continue the work that we did today here. We will try to create a frame in which we'll animate this debate, we will learn from experience from each other, and we will certainly to continue to this process. Somebody even asked, what about next workshops? Yes, next workshop will happen normally, and they will normally happen under the auspices of the CSAs, which is indeed one of the reasons why we are creating them. So we will have a luxury situation which will have not only one, but 4 running in parallel contracts with a hopefully very important symposium representing the sectors in these particular sectors. And they will, of course, one of the activities they will do will be the networking part of it, which will be including, of course, organizing events like this. And, of course, something that also has to be said, there are strong links between the different sessions, in particular low carbon technology and energy efficiency with carbon capture storage, but of course also with the others. So again, there will be a request to all these CSAs to work together in a consistent way. This is, I think, more or less what I wanted to highlight. I also was happy to hear, and I want to thank, of course, before concluding my remarks, of course, the Aspire and Association, which is at the heart of the Process for Planet industry, which is obviously, in our case, our main body to implement the energy efficient industries, together with the colleagues with the GRTD. So even during the chat, they were confirming their interest in supporting this process and to be somehow associated to make sure that the CSAs will be successful. And on that, I close my intervention and thanking you all, everybody again. And again, reminding you that both in DG Clima, RTD and CINEA, we are fully available for any further questions you may have in the future. Thank you, Alan.
Thank you very much, Jose. And you raised some very interesting points there, so thank you for that summary and in particular for clarifying the links with the CSA, which I think was a question that came up in each of the sessions, and it's nice that you take the opportunity to go over that one more time. So thank you very much for that, and I wonder whether Philip Shield, colleague from DG R&I, it will be available in your session, which was session 2, the renewable energy generation session. So Philip, I see you on screen. So if I could hand you the floor for your summary and closing remarks as moderator of this session. So Philip, floor is yours.
Thank you, Alan. Yes, we had a very interesting session on renewable energy. The presentation, we had 3 projects, including integration of PV in buildings, on osmosis energy, and on tidal energy. So from those 3 projects, we have a definite desire to have their radical innovation and improvement of their solutions through quite a number of projects from Horizon Europe and FP7 also, which shows that sort of the projects helps to bring technology closer to the market. They have also a great business potential, and hopefully the Innovation Fund will be able to realize them and to support the projects. It's often not just about the manufacturing of renewable energy technologies, it's also to ensure the integration and application. We had quite a debate regarding, in fact, the integration of PV in buildings, sort of raising the issue of the difficulties, in fact, to bring new technology in a very conservative sector. And also, upscaling of technology goes hand to hand with driving down cost and capex, which in fact, if those costs and capex can be reduced, then it will further accelerate the upscaling process, creating a sort of virtuous circle. So we have quite good matured H2020 projects, and it shows that the Innovation Fund could be instrumental to allow those projects in the renewable energy generation sectors to enter and build and go into underexploited market. This challenge faced by the project are quite diverse, including design, continuing and improving the design phase, over the manufacturing and developing value chain. In fact, it's quite a lot of interesting to hear from those projects that those three projects want to keep mainly the value chains in Europe. And in fact, one of the projects did mention the lesson learned in the pandemic, that if the value chain is too wide, it may create difficulty further down the line. But also that customer engagement is crucial, and all three projects are trying to see and catch the interest of potential customer. If sometimes some regulatory aspect may create troubles, but most of the projects are working closely with their potential customer to better understand the needs and therefore adapt their technology to the needs. The project also explained that they are seeking to promote their technology through technology hubs in Europe because there is strong potential in Europe. And the last point, as I mentioned a bit earlier, there is always a need for better regulation and regulatory access in Europe, especially for this kind of new technology like tidal or even sort of BIPV, where you need and you bring really innovation that is not really used and understand it. So I think that's what I would call and stop. I don't know if the other Philip of the sessions want to complement what I said. Where is it? Thank you.
Okay, Philippe, thank you so much. Philippe at this end says that he's not going to compliment what you said because you've covered all of the elements. So, I mean, thank you very much. And I think what you have demonstrated is that there was a good logic in breaking into the three thematic areas, or in fact 4 thematic areas broken into 3 sessions, which fit the Innovation Fund, because what you were talking about there in terms of tidal or BIPV, it's very good that there was a session focusing on all of those different areas, and I was listening into the different sessions and they were following their own technologies quite closely. So I think you gave some really nice feedback there from your particular area. So that brings us nicely now to the third session, which was energy storage and hydrogen. So Antonio Aguilo from Clean Hydrogen JU. I think you're ready. I see you there on the screen. Yeah, so I'll just hand you straight to the floor. So your feedback from your session. So thank you, Antonio. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Alan, and thank you for inviting us actually to support you and to moderate this session. I think that in itself, being 2 different prongs, if you want, shows very nice synergies, if you want, among us, and the dynamism of the workings relationships between different EU and Commission bodies. So going back to the session, I mean, we did have 3 projects planned. One of them, unfortunately, could not join due to technical issues, but the idea was that 2 of them were on hydrogen. We had one finally presented, but they had a very strong hydrogen component. One of them looking at deploying a hydrogen valley, a full hydrogen ecosystem in the island of Mallorca, using renewable energy to produce hydrogen, distributing, using it across the different end uses in energy, mobility. And the other one we had on hydrogen was looking at power-to-power systems, basically using, again, renewable energy, converting it or using electrolysis to convert it into hydrogen, obtain hydrogen, and then to use it for power generation, somehow substituting diesel generation in remote communities of grid locations. And then the third project that was foreseen was about the use of super batteries, if you want, with supercapacitor for mobility applications, including also non-road mobile machinery. So 3 different type of projects. We had the one from Mallorca not deeply presented, as the presenter, as I mentioned, could not be there. But anyway, we know the project well, so we could still capitalize on what they wanted to share. So if we think about the XCAP project, they used Horizon 2020 funding to develop battery technology for mobility using supercapacitors, helping them to develop batteries with better energy densities, faster charging times, and then what is very important in view of the use of critical raw materials, to develop high rates of recyclability. Now they are looking at the scaling up. I'm talking here about from the manufacturing perspective. As the speaker referred to it, the super batteries need a super factory. And this is actually where they see that the Innovation Fund can help them. I mean, they have experience already in the Innovation Fund. Now they will try to apply it again. And the interesting thing for me, which is a message I want also to send now, is that they are already secure partly of that finance that they need from national funding. And they know, because of the experience with the Innovation Fund, that the Innovation Fund offers the flexibility that they need to combine both fundings, if you want. So one takeaway, if you want, is that yes, the Innovation Fund is also to support the scaling up, if you want, of manufacturing capabilities, something that at least to me was very good to learn. And actually, Patricia from Skeleton, which is the company behind that, is actually looking at the combination of funds. They got support under the European Innovation Council, the accelerator instrument, as an SME. And what it was to me quite surprisingly and very positive is that you got the support directly from the SME, if you want, targeted instrument, all the way to Innovation Fund. So really the growth that they have seen within the last years, all the way to now getting this super factory in the pipeline is massive. And I think it really shows a very nice, if you want, narrative on how the European Union funding has really worked very effectively for them. Then we had the remote project. As I mentioned, they are developing a power-to-power system that rely 100% of renewable energy for remote communities. The idea of those systems is to get rid of diesel generation. So they have a number of demonstrations of this technology across Europe. And mainly in areas that are either off-grid off-grid located, or that in areas that the power grid is congested. So on that one, they see and they are actually looking at how the Innovation Fund could help them to scale up. I think that was a question as well made on the fact, okay, these are already demonstration projects in Horizon Europe. Can we do and use the Innovation Fund to scale up? And I think the answer and the conclusion throughout the discussion is that it is that possibility that the Innovation Fund can actually be the instrument to scale up also on this type of demonstration project. Finally, on the Hydrogen Valley in Mallorca, which I mentioned could not present, what is important is that they are actually already now starting to run this valley in Mallorca. The hydrogen production capacity is there. The first end users are coming very soon, and they are looking to expand. And I think the bottom line here is as well that the Innovation Fund could offer an opportunity to do that, but then it's important to see how the project is structured as to the sense that it could be that the Innovation Fund is not going to support hydrogen infrastructure projects only, but you need to come actually with the whole package from the renewable production as well, all the way to the end user. So there are, I think, there's some warnings to take into account when looking into applying to the Innovation Fund as well, but also very interested to see that they would like to apply for it. So I think altogether, I want to conclude that the three projects quite different, and all of them concluded that yes, their specificities are well captured in Innovation Fund, and they could all see that as a suitable tool and opportunities to support the next stage of these projects. And finally, in terms of the challenges, well, we didn't have the chance to go to each of them, but I think it's about the application, putting the application together, ensuring that the business plans are there, and following all the messages that were said this morning, when colleagues from CINEA were presenting, and from Klima were presenting the details of the Innovation Fund. Again, as my predecessors have mentioned, the good news is the CSA that now is included in Horizon Europe to help them to actually create consortia that could apply for Innovation Fund projects. That was well taken and noted, and I saw quite some interest in looking at this opportunity as well from some of the people that intervene in the session. So just to close, last half a minute, just to say that if we look at the synergies, we already know that some of our projects are actually already, if you want, taking advantage of that. We are aware that there are large-scale hydrogen projects having granted for support in the Innovation Fund, and they are using the hydrogen technology that the European funding framework program has been supported for the last 10, 20 years. So I think that's already something that maybe is not a synergy that could come out visible in this sense, but this is the case. I mean, all these projects from the Innovation Fund now is supporting, is looking at hundreds of megawatts of electrolyzer capacity being deployed, and they are actually using the technology that has been supported for the last years in the research and innovation programs. And I think that's very important to take into account, because without that, we would not have those projects now being able to deploy at larger scale. So I think synergies are already happening. And yeah, and we will, particularly in our joint undertaking, promote the Innovation Fund. We just actually now announced that we are preparing the grants for 9 hydrogen valleys, and certainly we see the Innovation Fund as a great instrument to support those to expand as well once they manage to get their first operations. That was it on my side. Thank you again so much for the opportunity, and looking forward to keep working together with all of you. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Antonio. And I would also like to extend our thanks to you for taking part in this session. It is extremely refreshing to see how so many services have reached out of their own silo. We've got CINEA, RTD, Klima, and the Clean Hydrogen JU all presenting today, not to mention the other external activities. So moving out of our silo, almost said our Slido, no, said that enough times today. Moving out of our silos is a good thing. And to hear from the external world, where the projects have used FP7, Horizon 2020, Horizon Europe, and now Innovation Fund, is also excellent view that some people are making these synergies happen. And I hope today is one step, as we were explaining earlier, in terms of making synergies happen a little bit more by design, and with a little bit more of this sort of workshop that elaborates one program to a useful constituency. Now I'm just going to check the time, because I think unbelievably, after a whole morning and all of the breakout sessions and all of the other things, we are actually on time for our finishing remarks. And I noticed that Alexandra Paco has already joined us, so is available on screen. So I mean, before we just do that, I would like to thank everybody for their collaboration and cooperation in the room here, but I hand over at this moment to Alexandra for his closing remarks for the session today. So Alexandra, if you're ready, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Alan, and good afternoon, colleagues. And first of all, congratulations for today, because I've been now listening to the summary of the breakout session, and I must say, very well done, very, very well done. I really hope that this session has been interesting, fruitful, stimulating for all the participants. I think it's an extremely timely event that we have organized today together with you all, because we see the strategic importance of these synergies between the funding instruments. Last week, the Commission issued this communication on the Green Deal Industrial Plan. Europe needs to continue to lead in terms of manufacturing clean tech in Europe. The competition is, of course, very big, and that's good news that other parts of the world are also boosting and supporting these technologies. We need them to really address our climate challenge. At the same time, in Europe, we are offering a lot of instruments, a lot of funding, which really help business to create an answer to these challenges. So I was very pleased to see this workshop being organized. Also zooming on a very important, let's say, synergy that we need to continue to stimulate between the Horizon Europe and the Innovation Fund. I think we heard today a number of very good examples where projects which are mature, successful out of the research can really benefit from the Innovation Fund as a way to really becoming commercially viable and being scaled up and really make a difference to address our challenges in Europe. What I would also like to flag is what also Antonio was saying, that a lot is already happening. And now we need to, of course, scale up, accelerate this transition. And by this type of conferences, by this type of networking, and also by maybe a more structured way of informing you or supporting you, we can really help you to also be successful, not only with ground research, but also in terms of becoming part of the Innovation Fund support projects. Also very happy that we can now launch this coordination and support action on the Synergy, so CSA, and you have still a couple of weeks to look into that, and I'm sure this will really help this process to continue. So to conclude, this is a journey, a very fascinating journey that we are taking together. You can really count on us, and I'm really very serious by saying that how much effort is really put by all services in the Commission to really help projects to be successful. And a big thank you to colleagues as well. There is a lot of work behind organizing this workshop. So thank you to the colleagues in CINEA, to RTD colleagues, CLIMA colleagues, and I'm wishing you really all the best success for the next steps. So over to you, maybe Alan, for the last word. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much for those very positive closing remarks, and I think you do a very good thing to put it in a larger framework of the fact that this is not one programme that's acting on its own. It's bringing those synergies together, as you mentioned, in a much larger framework that will really have the impact, and everybody has the same decarbonisation goals in mind. So thank you so much for those very constructive remarks. And I also would like to bring things to a conclusion now. I think we are really right on time for finishing. I would like to thank all of those people who took part in the sessions today. I really hope we elaborated the Innovation Fund, the explanation of how the fund works, the explanation of lessons learned from people who've really taken part in the programme, and the breakout sessions where we've looked for credible projects who have mature technologies that might be the next applicants to the fund. So I think that hopefully the participants out there found value in what we're doing here. And as I say, if I could encourage you to go to Slido and fill in the feedback form to see whether you think we had done a good job or not and what we could improve in the future. A last reminder that slides and the presentations will be available on the CINEA website in a few days' time. And I would just like to give a very specific shout out to Martha, Natalie, Morgan and Ona, and all of the CINEA team, who maybe I don't know everybody's names, but also to Philippe and Jose, who did an awful lot of work in setting this up, largely with myself and a few other colleagues from the very beginning, and the support we got earlier this morning from Clara, Joanna and Paloma. So with all that buy-in, I think that we've shown a good level of synergy from within the Commission services, and I hope that you in the future are encouraged to prepare proposals and use the Innovation Fund to its maximum potential, because it is a very, very good, and as we heard earlier, growing fund to deploy activities which are developed in the research and innovation actions, and that's the whole point of what we're doing. So with that, I draw the session to a close and say thank you very much, everybody, and have a great afternoon, and I hope you stay busy in preparing your proposals for the next IF large call. So thank you and goodbye.